Welcome to Curse, Code, and Crown, a live play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition podcast featuring a fully original world and campaign. I am the wizard Cronox, observer of time. Curse, Code, and Crown features our regular voiceover artists and improvisers, Laura Elizabeth as Princess Gwendolyn, Tyler Hewitt as Makka Deathcap, and Ryan LaPlante as Duncan Dano, alongside our dungeon master, the incredible Tom McGee. So get ready for an adventure including thrills, chills, and hope for a brighter tomorrow. It's time for Curse, Code, and Crown!
Our story begins at the end. A lot of people assumed that because they had done well once, or because someone else had done well once, that they didn't need to bother to do well anymore. People had grown complacent, and the world had begun to suffer for it. Not that many people noticed, going about their daily business, the affairs of court, the affairs of the world. But slowly and surely, things were beginning to fall apart. And so we begin at the end, when all hope was lost. That is, until an old turtle decided to leave his swamp. Welcome to Curse, Code, and Crown, the new Dum Dums and Dice adventure here on our network. This is an adventure I'm very excited about, and it's brand new, and we're just kicking it off right now. So before we get underway, my name is Tom McGee. I will be your DM for this ride. Actors, don't introduce your characters yet, but if you just go around and say who you are for those listening at home, that'd be great.
Tom, you know the order we're in on your screen. Can you tell us who should go first?
I sure can. Tyler, you are to my left, and if you're watching this, to your left as well.
Oh, you're not talking to me when you're talking about me watching it.
No, sorry. Tyler, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name's Tyler Hewitt, and I'm playing a secret character that you're not allowed to know about at this time, so just have to deal with that.
Laura, you are in the bottom left of our screen. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Laura Elizabeth, and I am a being, maybe? You'll
Excellent.
find out.
Yep. Aces.
She is a gaseous form.
I did this in the right order for reals. Yes, Tyler, directly beneath you. And Ryan, you're in the bottom right.
Yeah, I'm Ryan LaPlante, and my name is Ryan.
Great.
Nailed it.
So this is a brand new adventure we're building from scratch, so thank you for going on this journey with us, and we hope you enjoy it. So, it is a momentous day in the floating kingdom of Orval. After years and years of isolation, years and years of being cut off from the rest of the world, it has floated without a care above. Finally, a delegation is arriving from the down low. The down low is the main surface of the planet where all manner of people and creatures live, none of whom are of much concern to the mighty kingdom of Orval. On this particular day, King Valdrin Kin Solaris is expecting a guest from the Consortium of Bleen, a merchant and shipping conglomerate that kind of controls the central islands of the down low. They have reached out to him in dire need of assistance, and it would have to be dire for them to contact Orval because the kingdom of humanity has been cut off from the rest of the world for quite some time, content with its own affairs of court and the business of running the state. And so on this day of days, the consortium has sent a desperate band to attempt to cure a curse that is slowly killing their business and possibly their race. Amongst this delegation, there is a bit of a strange character, a strange turtle who doesn't quite fit with the rest of his turtle companions from Bleen. For years and years, he's lived in the swamps and was only ever really consulted on mystical matters or by people who believed in the old mystical ways that have very little to do with business and with commerce and with the way of the world. And as a result, it was a surprise to all involved to hear that he had been included in this particular expedition. And it is with him that we begin our tale as he first sets foot after climbing the long bending and swaying staircase that has been built into the massive chain that tethers the floating kingdom to the down low. as he and his fellow delegates arrive and set foot in the floating kingdom of Orval. So, Tyler, can you tell us what you look like, what your name is, and what the first thing you notice about this flying, floating kingdom of humanity is?
Yes, okay. So I am Maka Deathcap. I am a turtle, meaning I am basically a turtle tortoise person. We walk on two legs and stand upright, sort of. Our heads kind of come jutting out the way a turtle's would from its shell. We do have massive shells as well. I look pretty different from my turtle companions. Most turtles are like green or blue in hue. My skin is gray, and I have a black shell. There also appear to be a number of fungal growths coming up out of my shell, and even some starting to kind of change and warp the shape of my turtle-y face. My one of my eye sockets is kind of like bulging a little. My eyes are completely white, and I have painted on my forehead a crescent moon pointing downwards. And that same crescent is also just larger on the front of my my shell as well.
So the curve goes down and the points of the moon go up.
Yeah, almost like a smile. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a moon. Yeah.
And
just the last thing is I'm not wearing any clothes, which isn't particularly unusual for turtle. Their shells kind of cover a lot of utility. I just have basically like a really worn down and threadbare, like a net stretched across the back of my shell that many sort of trinkets and baubles and pouches have been tied to and are hanging from.
Cool. Do you carry a weapon of any sort?
I do. I'm carrying a mace, and I also have it looks like a slab of like oak. It's actually petrified wood that I have as a shield strapped to my arm. So
Orval is, if you think of it as kind of a massive floating, almost if you think of what Sokovia in Avengers 2 looked like, so like a sort of a chunk of earth that is floating with a flat surface, and the buildings of it have a tone similar to kind of the shining, almost rainbow-hued buildings of, say, Asgard in the Marvelverse, or kind of the like a sort of a glass city almost. Very modern, in a still a very fantasy way, but just bedecked with finery. Everything is gorgeous and gilt, a little bit like Naboo, like just everything's a little overdone.
Right, okay.
There's sort of a number of pennants and pinions flying in the air, marked with strange symbols that you don't recognize. And even just looking around, incredible care has been put into making these interlocking stones fit on the streets, which are perfectly flat. Well manicured lawns on either side. Everything seems to be very much in its place. Bit of a Final Fantasy X vibe if you played that game, where everything's very bright and colorful, and just a little overly slick. Like walking into the Apple Store. The entire island is held aloft by these sort of massive wings on each kind of that sort of ring the edge of the island, that are, think like almost massive solar panels that are all kind of flapping in irregular time to keep the floating island aloft.
So they're mechanical?
Yes.
Okay.
To your eye. Yeah. It looks like something that could be run by a steam engine. You're not quite sure of the mechanics of it, but it's certainly enough to keep the island aloft. Okay. So you've just sort of, again, had a massive climb up the sort of huge chain that tethers, known as the tether, that keeps Orval from just drifting around the world. It's been a considerable climb. I think you're probably not too used to inclines. But then again, neither are your companions. So the delegation is headed up by Presidentia Umos, who is a turtle. She only has one arm. Her other arm was lost when she was young, and she has a very ornate cap over her that side of the shell that almost think like a half cape, but if it was made of gold and kind of woven into her shell. Her shell is painted in all variety of colors. It's very, to your eye, unnecessary. You have trinkets and baubles, but this seems like the work. It's like she had to sit in a makeup chair on a special effects laden film. So very, very overdone. And around her neck, around the front, she wears a symbol of office, which is a beautiful ancient abacus. That denotes kind of it's a sign of respect, and shows that sort of she is responsible for keeping the checks and balances of the consortium in order as the Presidentia. The consortium of Bleen is sort of a number of different turtle clans in the sort of islands of Bleen, which are sort of central in this world. That all eventually ran different businesses, whether they were shipping or importing or exporting, and eventually just came together under one sort of larger banner. You left the society long ago for reasons we'll get into as we go, that you and I have discussed, but when they came to your swamp and asked for your aid, your concern for the health of the swamp and the help of the people meant that you joined up with them. So it's the Presidentia. With her is her sort of the captain of the guard, who is First Sword Chestnut Kell, who is think like a very his shell has been almost sanded down to act very defensively. It's very easy for weapons to slide off it. It's been greased up, so it kind of shimmers in the light. And he carries sort of a massive double-handed sword just kind of casually over his shoulder. There's no hilt. This is just a thing he carries, cool. And he's got the arms to show it. There are also two other delegates whose names you haven't gotten, nor have you bothered to ask, nor have they bothered to introduce themselves to you. But they seem to be carrying a lot of paperwork. And one of them carries a chest of treasures. So what is the first thing that strikes you? Also, what is your name? Oh, you gave us your name.
Yeah, Maka, yeah.
Maka, great. So Maka, what's the first thing that strikes you about this kingdom you've just set foot into?
It's all extremely alien. Everything you described, basically, even the most mundane details of what you just described are completely out of the ordinary for Makka, who lives in solitary, in the swamp, in a bog, and he has very limited contact with other, say, humanoids. So if there's any, all these buildings must mean like a lot of people as well. That's extremely unusual. And because he's from the down low, it's also probably the height is messing with him a little bit. It probably isn't perceivable to the denizens of this kingdom, but if he might be a little uneasy on his feet, given that this city is floating in the air. So it's all so alien to him.
Cool. Yeah. For your own reference, the people of Orval refer to the planet beneath as the down low. Yeah. To you, it, the world itself is known as Gren, and you are from the islands of Bleen. But the down low is a term where I'm going to speak in Orvalian terms because our other characters are centered here and our story kind of is focused here to begin. But yeah,
we don't look at ourselves as down low people. We are
not at all. In fact, you probably have never seen a human. You've heard of them perhaps, but really these are incredibly odd short elves. They just seem like elves who went through the dryer one too many times.
Okay.
So with this alien world around you and strangers, but less strange than everything else at your side, you begin to make your way towards the central palace. In that palace, everyone is running around. There is complete and utter chaos. This is a day that King Valdrin Kin Solaris has been dreaming of. And pretty much everyone who lives near him knows that, because he has always taken it as a great personal insult that no one has bothered to visit, essentially. So this is an important meeting, and it's an important meeting for establishing Orval in its kind of rightful place amongst the other world powers, and possibly get a seat at the table that he has been previously denied to the entirety of the human race, but it's particularly rubs Veldrin the wrong way. So, on this day of days, nothing can go wrong. And he has just driven this into every servant, every guard, everyone in the royal palace. They know that if anything does, the philosopher's king's rage will be fast and furious. Possibly Tokyo Drift. We don't know. But full of rage and full of destruction. So everyone is working to try and appease him. And none more so, perhaps, than his daughter, the Princess Gwendolyn. So, Laura, why don't you tell us about yourself? You are currently in your room as the heir to the throne of Solaris. You are a very well-appointed room that you've spent most of your life in. So tell us about yourself, please.
Yes, my name's Gwendolyn, and you can see I have basically long flowing black hair, very like princessly, like you'd think. Like think of like Princess Marjorie Tyrell from Game of Thrones is a good reference, but much more beautiful, much more important. I wear kind of a sea green blue gown with little golden what's it called? Like threaded delicate flowers, and everyone else doesn't really matter.
Yep.
And you can tell just by the way I sit.
Yep. Your sort of handmaid can certainly tell as she finishes kind of brushing your hair out to that perfect long length. She kind of bows to you and scurries out the door. Gwendolyn, you've been tasked today with two pretty important jobs. One, your father, the king, has demanded that you keep a close eye on these, quote, weird turtle fuckers. Because having been cut off from the other races and cultures of Gren for so long, no one really knows what to expect. And it's Valdrin's great hope that if he can get a seat at the table, you'll be dealing more and more with the people of the down low. And he kind of assumes that you'll be carrying on his legacy after he's gone. Although it should be noted, he is hardy and hale. He's just a young, handsome, think like kind of if you crossed Jaime Lannister with Phil Hartman, just kind of that. So like a little bit of smarm, but also like there's some real like handsome young prince shit going on there. And he carries himself as such. Every room is his room. Every audience is his audience, and he makes sure the world knows it. So your first task is to observe this and learn what you can about these strange reptiles.
These weird turtle fuckers.
Yes, the turtle fuckers.
Right.
Yes. The other key concern for you is your brother Nikos. Nikos is younger than you by 2 years. But you wouldn't be able to know it from how often he opens his mouth in matters of court. For someone who is not in line for the throne, he's a mouthy little guy. And the Philosopher King is quite concerned at how much face he could lose if Nikos opens his mouth and blabs. Not in front of the turtle fuckers, but in front of the rest of the court. As the princess, you are familiar with how the court structure is based. It's based on an ancient system kind of handed down from the great unifying hero Amala Kin Solaris, the bringer of dawn, who founded Orval and is still kind of almost worshipped as a god. as like in kind of modern parlance, almost like a George Washington type in terms of we were nothing until this person unified us. So the council is based on all the different jobs that exist in Orval, and everyone has a representative. However, the representatives were always overseen by whoever held the title of Kin Solaris, the philosopher, king or queen, carrying on the tradition of the great unifier, Amala. That said, over the past few generations, power has become increasingly based on the throne. So everyone's a little resentful of the dynasty that managed to get in there under the wire and declare themselves kind of kings and queens in perpetuity, which of course is your family. In this society, last names are historically rare. They're more common now, but as a princess, you're waiting on the big name, which is Kin Solaris. Till then, fuck it. So to lose face in front of all these people who are hungry for the throne is very concerning, and you are too damn good at this for it to be your fault. But Nikos is still hungry and he wants to make a name for himself. So it's your job to stop potentially an international incident, and you hugely resent this. As you go to leave your room, your eyes light on one of the only remnants of kind of your youth that you've kept. It's a doll that's laying kind of tucked half under your pillow, and it is a ratty, kind of ugly thing that was handmade for you by the old captain of your guard, a man who was for a long time your only friend, your protector, your mentor. And it's in the same way that childhood is often a bit foggy. You don't quite remember why he doesn't hang around anymore. But you remember he always filled your heads with stories of Amala and her Dawnbreakers and the power of kind of hope and unity and what it means to have a code and to be a good ruler, all of which, of course, after years in court, you've realized is bullshit. But for some reason, you just haven't quite been able to let go of this ratty doll that this large fighting man made for you. And now, as you sort of step out to carry out your first official act, really, in court, you can't help but think on it for a moment and think on who you were kind of before court life consumed you. My question is, do you leave it where it is, or do you throw it out?
I think I'm going to put it in like a little sack that I have and just basically shove it into like the back of a closet.
Okay, gotcha. So more an out of sight, out of mind, but not quite
exactly.
full...
I'm not quite ready to give it up, but because it means something to me. I think. Yeah. Not quite sure what, but just get out of my sight. Go.
Doll. Great.
Tom, just a quick question on show tone, because this is brand new, this whole adventure. I'm assuming we want to allow swears, but if we allow swears, we can't put ads on the show on YouTube. What do we want to do?
This might be
I can censor them up until this point, but after this I'm going to forget.
This might be a pause and have a conversation thing that we...
The decision was, fuck it. Okay, back to the world.
Great. So, Gwendolyn, you sweep out into the hallway, and the palace was intended to be humble. It had plain walls. You remember from kind of your history lessons that Amala was a nobody, a miner who kind of literally like slapped together some armor with copper plating she found in the mine and managed to lead this army. So when she established the palace, she wanted to make sure that it didn't carry any heirs. But that was 1,000 years ago. So now this place has been dressed up. The walls have been painted. It's got a bit of a weird sense because beneath the paint you can see that it is rough stone, and it is in no way polished or finished. But it's been definitely gussied up since then. So you sweep out into a hallway with sort of paintings of various rulers of Orval kind of lining the halls. There is a sort of beautiful but worn red velvet rug that kind of runs the length of it. And as there are in kind of most European palaces, just like weird little half tables with random tchotchkes that are probably worth more than I'll ever make in my life, just kind of lining the halls. And you step into the hall just in time to see Nikos knock one of those small statues off with his greatsword.
Nikos, what are you doing?
Gwendolyn, dear, I was just practicing my footwork, and with footwork comes swordwork.
No footwork, sword down. Down, put it down.
So he, like, begrudgingly, like, puts it in his sheath. This, you know that this is one of, you know how, like, the British monarchy has, like, weird things they just give to the people who aren't going to get the throne so they seem like they're important? This sword is one of them. It was the great sword of the first Dawnbreaker, so the first person who took up the cause of Amalakin Solaris. It is the sword of Captain Elos, known now as the Elos Blade. It is a beautiful piece of craftsmanship, far too fine for this young idiot. In Game of Thrones terms, we're talking like any of the kind of house swords made of Valyrian steel. So like this thing cuts. Like it's a European medieval greatsword, but kind of with the sharpness and balance of a katana. Just a very elegant weapon that in no way should be in the hands of this like 16-year-old. So he kind of puts it away in a huff. His entire outfit jangles when he does, because he's got a ton of epaulets and like little dangly bits. You can tell he's trying to look like a general, even though he doesn't have any medals.
Yeah. Is his name Nikos? Yeah.
Nikos, yep.
Nikos, let's get this straight. And I just kind of grab him very like roughly by the shoulders, like very firmly, and just say like, you're an embarrassment to your family. You're an embarrassment to this kingdom. Any more of an embarrassment, and you might find yourself dead.
Oh dear, please put me down, Gwen. And you're like, at this point, holding him up off the ground. He is a scrawny little guy. Think DJ Quayle's in the earliest of DJ Quayle's movies if he was younger. So just like literally just arms and a face so his little legs kick. He's wearing incredibly fine shoes that the rest of them's in like combat-y stuff, but you can tell these are built for comfort. And you put him down, and he kind of like blows his black hair out of his eyes and crosses his arms petulantly.
Stay by my side, do not say a word, and you might get through this.
Get through this. There's more to life than simply getting through, Gwendolyn.
Yes, but you have to get through first in order to experience the other things.
But I don't want to.
Oh, shut up and follow me.
Harm. And he begins shuffling petulantly along the hallway, kicking the head of the tiny broken statue that was once blown out of delicate glass by one of the first citizens of this nation. Meanwhile, far away from the palace, a different kind of glass is broken. This one thrown at the head of a man who's dealing with a job he frankly would rather not be doing. But the problem with a job is that one way or another, it's got to get done. We find ourselves in a tavern that is more stench than building. It doesn't reek of yesterday's beer. It reeks of the ghosts of beers past, as well as a healthy dose of vomit, urine, and possibly more foul substances. Ryan, your character has just ducked under this glass that was thrown at his head. The entire bar is raucous. The music continues. There's a really strange stage play happening that doesn't seem to make much sense. And no one has blinked an eye as this glass has been thrown. However, the three drunken toughs standing in front of you aren't happy with just one weapon thrown. They look you up and down, and one of them chuckles and mutters, "Copper." Ryan, who are you and what do you look like?
All right, so my name is Duncan Dano. I look vaguely like Paul Bettany if you add 10% of Jude Law. So just a little more stern and regal, but very much in the Paul Bettany verse. About 6 feet tall, mid 40s. He's lean, but he's clearly fit. He's wearing an elaborate black outfit that kind of... It's got one of those like chest shelves in like leather that you see like bodybuilders and dancers wear kind of thing. And then under it is just a black silk shirt that just kind of billows out. So he's very lean, but he also has 2 daggers strapped kind of at either hip and a rapier. And he's a little bit sort of like me where the beard was lined in once. But it's kind of rough around the edges. He's blonde hair kind of swept back that seems almost at odds to kind of the black that he's wearing everywhere else. And from wrist to elbow, just kind of like it kind of extends a little bit over the palm. Oh, yeah, Luna. And then it actually curves over the elbow. He has copper arm guards that have just been like lightly kind of decorated that have been put on his forearms that he uses for like blocking. They're part of his kind of combat setup. And he looks up at the 3 of them. Well, I'm sorry about this, friends, but what I think is perhaps you should walk away. And he just starts spinning a dagger like over his fingers on one hand. And he's like, people make mistakes in the dead of night and sometimes in the day. And some people just are mistakes. So it'd be a real shame if one of you had to go home dead. And then you just hear a click. And they look down and see that his pistol, like a flintlock style pistol, is just aimed at the middle of them. Well, you know, I can't guarantee I can kill all 3 of you, but I can guarantee I can kill 2 of you. So who feels like they'd like to dance with the Lord of Blades first?
So the 3 toughs kind of look at each other, and the biggest one, who's got like a real like he's got just a mistake of a mustache going on. He kind of sways back and forth a little bit, and he just mutters, I like a copper to bring a gun to a glass fight. You think you're all tough? Oh, look at me. I'll break the dawn. You're a joke. Why don't you put that little pea shooter down and show us what you got? And then he starts doing that fucking Val Kilmer cup thing from Tombstone, where he's like, look, I could do fancy things too. And he just flips like a mug back and forth in his fingers in a very non-impressive way. And then he's like, but I need are fists. I don't need a gun.
Well, you're quite the charmer, aren't you there? I mean, you've put all those years into growing that half a mustache, so it's probably time that you and I have a little dance. And he just stands up and shoves his chair back, and he like sinks the dagger into the table and puts the pistol away. But then in a flourish, no one could see that he has like a one shoulder over cape. He just pulls it aside, and then the rapier is out and the gun is up in another guy's face. It's just like, all right, I lied. I can take the 3 of you. Here's the interesting thing about being a copper, as you like to call it. I'm judge, jury, and executioner. So you can all just die here, or you can fuck off. I vote you choose real quick by turning around and walking away. Because the one thing I've learned is that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will make me shoot you. And he just cocks back the hammer, and I would like to intimidate them if possible.
Yeah, all right, go ahead. First die roll of the game, baby.
Hey!
All right, and that is a 23 for intimidation.
I suppose that'll do, level 1 character. That'll do.
Jesus Christ.
So there's a guy who's wearing like what is unfortunately an incredibly fashionable hat, and like you just kind of wish all 3 of these guys just like looked in some way repellent to you, but like this guy's really pulling it off. So Fancy Hat just like puts a hand on Mistake Stash's shoulder, and he's like, listen, Geralt, I think we should go, man. This guy means trouble, and I know he's a copper, but like, what if he's like the old ones, like the scary ones from the Bard's Tales and from that play? And you look to the stage, and it's like a guy wearing like a giant sun around his chest, being like, "'Tis I. You shall face the Lord of Blades." And then he like trips on his cape. And Duncan, this kind of shit just salt in the wound, man, every time. But the other two thugs are definitely like clearing back, and Mistake Stash starts to do that weird like tough guy retreat where he's like edging back while still trying to look tough, and he's like, just know you haven't heard the last of me, Geralt of Riveria. And then he throws his mug down, and it shatters on the ground, and he stumbles out the back door.
Great. I click back the hammer and aim at his friend, and I go, I will go outside and kill him if you don't leave your hat.
Fancy Hat looks at his, like, takes his hat off and holds it in his hands, and like Sarah McLachlan's "I Will Remember You" starts playing, and he's just like, goodbye, old friend, and he kisses the hat, and then he puts it on the ground. Remarkably, he has incredibly good hair. Like, this guy is just, there's a lot going on here. And then just kind of like leaving his hand like trailing like like someone standing on the shore watching a boat disappear. he exits out with his companions.
And I pick up the hat and yell after him, find yourself some new friends or you're not going to be so pretty the next time I see you. And then I put the hat on and I sit. I can appreciate a man who takes advice. And then I just put the hat on. What does the hat look like, Tom? You just told me it was fashionable.
It is sort of a beautiful wide-brimmed hat, sort of a single feather in it.
Ooh, yeah.
Think like a musketeer hat. So like very good for sweeping off, for dramatic bows. Good enough that you could like give someone some like clever eye from under the brim. But this style of hat is relatively new. It's kind of come in the last couple years. One of the interesting things that you've always found frustrating about life in Orval is because of the amount of prosperity, trends change constantly for the sake of new things. So you're constantly seeing people just dump extraordinary sums on whatever new thing was just added or invented. Weirdly, this is a bit of a throwback. There's kind of a retro phase hitting the streets right now. And I think maybe what attracts you to the hat, Duncan, is this looks like something from like 100 years ago that's somehow come back around, and that's kind of nice compared to the other new stuff.
Yeah, I've seen it in like paintings on walls of things. Like, yeah, where it's got that old school vibe. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, like it's a little bit off. It's slightly more breathable and like lightweight, and honestly, that's actually probably a good thing. But yeah, it speaks to the kind of historical romantic in you of something that has lasted the test of time. So with that, you having kind of run these thugs off, you sit back down at the bar. And the bartender, who is a just kind of a perpetually smiling man with sort of a kind of a Captain Hook style mustache going on, and like small braided mutton chops, and otherwise just bald as a cue ball, comes over and he starts pouring you a drink. What do you think Duncan's drink of choice is?
Okay, I've already been in a fight here. How often do I get challenged to fight in this bar, Tom?
I think lots of people get challenged to fight in this bar a lot, but coppers aren't welcome in this part of town. This is it's called the Docks. There isn't actually a dock anywhere near here, but it's one of those weird archaic terms that's kind of been carried forward. So this is quite close to where a lot of the factories are. Orval is fantastic at industry, particularly weapons and armor, but also, again, fashion, architecture. There's a lot of things that require manufacturing, and you are kind of in the district that deals primarily with that. Everyone's still pretty wealthy here. They're not wealthy compared to the nobles, but like I don't want you to think of kind of like Industrial Revolution, like I have 1 pence to my name, maybe I'll eat some bread. They are that to the rest of Orval, but like still very comfortably middle class. Yeah, so it's a tougher neighborhood, and I think of all the bars and there are many, this is the one you find most comfortable. And as a result, the bartender Montalban is like, he's not your friend, but you're a regular, and it's the classic like Irish cop thing in like cop movies, where it's just like he knows you, he's happy to keep providing you with drink because he knows you're good for it. And honestly, it's a rough place. Fights happen. There will be another fight in 5 minutes. It won't involve you, but like.
Cool. Then I'm probably drinking ale. I feel like everybody else is probably getting fucked up on the hard shit, but he needs to be ready to kind of throw down if he needs to be.
Yep.
And when you're the guy with a sword and a gun, it doesn't do you well to be drunk.
Sure.
In fights.
So he pours you some ale. Ryan, what's the name of this bar?
Oh, Bitter and Sons.
Bitter and Sons. That's great. So Montalban pours you the ale, and he's like, "Well, Duncan, you're certainly not one to not cause trouble, huh? What was the result this time? How'd you get that hat?"
You know, sometimes you got to teach people a lesson, and sometimes there's profit in that. I didn't think that was what justice is about, but you know what? The world teaches you lessons over time.
I run a bar in a bad part of town. You do not need to tell me what justice looks like. Looks like man with gun, man with sword, and man with fast reflexes, no?
Well, that's the nice thing about being someone with all three. You get these great arm guards, and then everyone just wants to fucking kill you.
Yes, well, that is the price of law, huh? And then he goes back to...
this is the same nihilistic conversation I think they've had for 5 years.
However, this time he notices that you stayed past... like, you're already here later than you normally would be. I think normally it's like you stop in for one to kind of get you through the next part of your day, but for some reason you've been here longer. So after he serves a couple more customers, he comes back and he's like, Duncan, this is a strange time for you to be here. What is so special about today? And for you, Duncan, today's is particularly tough because it's the first time Orval has opened its borders in quite some time. As a member of the Dawnbreakers, the kind of royal guard, the elite royal guard of Orval, you're privy to some information that others in the kingdom, including perhaps the princess, aren't. And one of those facts is on the down low, there is a wall that prevents the rest of Gren from reaching the bottom of the tether. It's commonly thought here that people just didn't bother to stop by. However, from your time in the service, you're fully aware that that wall is guarded, armed, and is meant to repel anyone who comes in. And as a result, the opening of the closed kingdom is always a very big deal. And you're thinking of your former charge, your former ward, the Princess Gwendolyn, who you had such high hopes for, who has now just become part of the royal machine. And the little girl that you knew would have loved a chance to meet people from outside, but you're terrified of what that little girl is going to do now that she's a woman. So you look into your ale. Do you answer Montalban with anything, or do you just sit there stoically sipping?
I feel like he just like looks into the drink and he just goes, same shite, different day. And then he just drinks and looks out the door.
Great. So, Maka, you are approaching the palace now. And I think where the rest of the delegation is actively trying to keep their focus off of kind of the distractions around them, since you don't really know court etiquette or anything else, or diplomatic etiquette, you're just kind of free to do what you want, look at what you want. Your eyes are caught in particular by, there's a sort of a central, you enter a massive circular sort of town center. It's a sort of a large marble space, and there seem to be benches all looking inward. Just sort of marble benches. You can see people eating their lunch and like just kind of going about their business. And in the dead center of that, you see an old suit of armor that's kind of in that classic Iron Man pose. So like one fist down on the ground, one knee up on one knee, And the other hand kind of like open, palm up to the sky. And you can see that the armor seems to be holding part of a giant link of a chain. And you realize that this must be the center of the tether, the large chain that you climbed. You climbed it to a point, and then there was kind of almost like if you were on a lake, you know how docks have like a little ladder. There was a means of getting you from the stairs up. But you can see that this is kind of the center, and something about this armor kind of, I think, appeals to your sense of history. You can tell it's ancient, and it's not ornate. It looks so unlike the rest of the things that you've seen here so far. It's rough hammered, dented, slightly rusted. There's some bird shit on it. Like it seems to have been here for a long time. And to your surprise, you feel kind of a tug on your net.
What's tugging on my net?
You turn around and there's a human, but his size is even stranger than the other ones you've seen. He seems to be half the size of the rest of them. And you realize this must be what like a human child looks like. And you can see that he's like a young boy who's kind of run away from his parents. And he kind of does that little kid thing where he like gestures to you to like lean down.
So I'll do that. I'll lean down and kind of just grumble and just lean in and say, "Hello, little man."
Oh, hello, Mr. Large Turtle. You know who that is? And he points at the armor.
No, I do not. Do you know who it is?
Yeah. Her name was Amla Solaris, and she was really cool, and she like made this place, and that was her armor. That's what she used to wear, and now it keeps us all safe.
The armor keeps you safe.
Yeah, that's what everybody tells me, but I just think it's armor, but I think it's pretty cool. And I saw you looking, and often I look at things and no one tells me what they are, so I thought maybe I would tell you. Anyway, I hope you have a nice day, Mr. Turtleman. Bye-bye. And you see him just kind of like start to scurry away. And it's that classic like little kid thing where the fact of a giant turtle walking through town is like, yeah, all right. And you see his father's kind of look and be like, oh, come back here. Stay away from that thing. And they kind of grab his hand and start leading him away.
Okay. Well, that's the reception I'm more used to, so that's fine.
It's like, for me, that's a Wednesday.
Yeah. I want to get a closer look at this armor.
Cool. So here's a question, Tyler, and I don't know this because these are all new characters, which is super fun. What do you think when you're doing when Maka is interested in something? How do you think his brain kind of approaches an issue? Is it through, and I'm not just talking like mechanically, but in terms of like my brain's rigged for story, so I always try and put a narrative around things. What do you think his way of approaching things is?
I think what he finds most interesting about the world is how it fits into the cycle of life and death, because everything does in some way. Whether it's anything from funeral rites and how they change from culture to culture, to even structures and things that mortals build to stave off death or lengthen their lifespan, although it's usually inevitable. All that stuff is still part of the cycle. None of it would be possible without the cycle driving you to survive. So looking at new things and puzzling out how they fit into the cycle, I think would be of interest to Maka. Or at least how he would have to basically relate to such a drastically new environment would be to rely on the old ways, the ways that he knows.
Okay, so I would say I'd let you roll me a history check. I would let you roll me an investigation. I'm open to suggestions if there's anything you think he would use. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just trying to figure out mechanically what that lives with. But I think those are...
I was just going to say, I'm fine with either of those. I would propose that a nature check would be in order, only because thinking that's like the lens that he would look through, whether that would be an accurate read or not.
Okay, so here's I think what I'll give you, Tyler. So for Maka, when you're investigating these things, I think the delineation I would give you is we'll kind of look at the 3 different ways he can think about things. So nature, if it's just purely, I understand the cycle, so I'm going to look at a thing and see how I think it fits into the cycle. History, if it's unfamiliar enough, you're like, I don't quite know what this is, so I'm going to try and figure out how it would fit into a cycle, would be the history check. And I would give you investigation if it's like, I'm going to fuck around with this thing to see what it is. So go ahead and roll nature, because I think you're a stranger in a strange land. You're going to lean on the things you know best at this point, I think.
I think it's also like history is like what he's learned in his lifetime.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, I dig that.
At his time walking
cool.
around and things like that. I think investigation is like actively looking at something and taking new information and sequencing it together with other new information.
Totally.
Like that's investigating. And I think nature is like drawing on the knowledge of like the collective that he is kind of a part of.
Cool. So go ahead and kind of reach out to the spores and the kind of mycelial network, for lack of a better term, and see how you think this fits.
So that is an 18 nature
18?
check.
Okay, cool. This to you seems like someone who, in terms of kind of the life and death cycle, this isn't the armor of someone who intends to live necessarily. It is it's clearly to your eye almost an adaptation mechanism. It doesn't seem like, as armor goes, this doesn't seem like I am preparing to go to war, I will go to war. This seems like war has come, I must protect myself, but I don't expect this to keep me alive. There's not a sense of flippancy, because that's the wrong term. There's a bit of a cavalier tone to this armor. It seems kind of like, in modern parlance, it'd be like, I picked up a trash can as a shield. Like, it's, what do I have at hand that can protect me a bit, blah, blah, blah. It also seems very old. This doesn't seem to gel with if you were to look around the world around you right now and try and guess where it fits in the cycle that you understand, the stuff around you is very different. It's extracting things and processing them and turning them aesthetic, like too much of a focus on aesthetic. This thing just seems purely functional. So weirdly, this is closer to your mace. It's a tool. It's a tool. It looks like a tool.
Right. Okay.
It also looks, as I said, very old.
I want to look at the chain that it's holding. Maka will walk over there and pick up the chain to get a closer look at it. The chain is, you can tell that it's heavy, and it's actually linked to a larger. So the fist is holding chain that could fit in a human fist. Mm-hmm. That chain is in turn welded to a massive link that is almost the size of like a bench. Okay, wow. That is going through the ground, and that tracks with the size of chain that you observed on the tether. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so the tether, just for visual, is like massive chain links, and kind of stairs that have obviously like a railing, but that can gyrate a bit with the movement of the chain. So you can always walk up it, but it's not like a solid piece of architecture.
Right.
Okay. You can tell this is the top of the chain. On closer inspection, you can see that what looked to be solid links from your climb is in fact built of what looked to be hammered down swords and axes and armor. It looks like discarded pieces of war material that has been reforged into this chain. And yeah, to your eye, this is it's a monument. It's a symbolic symbol of something that seems to be important. And the founding of a nation, even though you're not really of a nation, since you live in the swamp, is something you understand as being important and something that people... It's not your style, but you understand the instinct.
Okay. Looking around, the people don't appear to be revering this
Not at all.
site. No?
No. Everything around you seems well worn. The ground is well worn, so it looks like the site has been here for a long time. But no, it seems as much a piece of the scenery as the lampposts with the sort of like torches lit. Even though it's bright daylight, there's constantly a ring of things. It just feels like part of the scenery. In kind of modern terms, it would be like people might stop and take a selfie if they weren't from here, but everyone's from here, so it's just part of the scenery. Except to, of course, that little kid.
Right.
The Presidentia turns around and just, as glowery as a turtle can glower, just like puckers her turtle face, and she just says, Maka, are we boring you with our incredibly important mission to save our people?
No. Quite the opposite. Find myself overwhelmed here. Let us return to the task at hand. I apologize.
And she like moves a couple things on the abacus and turns and continues to walk. So, Gwendolyn, inside the palace, you've entered the Great Hall. The Great Hall was originally designed to be similar to the Round Table, a massive space where no one really was above anyone else. But that shit's changed. So it is a massive circular table that has been sheared off on one end, and a throne has been built and added for the Philosopher King. It is a heavy stone chair to imply the, grace of difficulty, and, it's a nod to the weird kind of minimalist aesthetic that was originally intended. However, this was also built by people who want to be comfortable. So it's stone, but it's got like a pre-built ass groove and all that stuff to it's as ergonomic as a stone chair can be. You enter to find your father aggressively pacing circles around the chair, which he does when he's particularly agitated. Meanwhile, the rest of the court is kind of awkwardly standing, not at their chairs, but behind them, just kind of waiting for him to sit. And as you enter, he looks up at you, and there's a ghost of relief flitters across his face. And he's like, "Oh, yes, very good. Oh, Gwendolyn, thank the gods you're here. Everything is going just terribly.
And I do the normal courtly thing and bow, curtsy low, Your Majesty.
And he curtsies back, as is the custom.
Yeah.
And
then is Nikos with me still?
He's still over your shoulder, but you could tell the minute you walked in that he immediately straightened up and started walking a little more, cockily, but a little more properly. And he does a half-assed version of the royal curtsy.
Okay. And I glare at him.
Gwendolyn, you know how thrilled I have been with the idea of these turtle fuckers arriving, that we can finally get our foot in the door with the lower-born creatures, but I must say there has been quite a commotion since they ascended the tether, and I am concerned that this might turn into a bit of an incident, which of course would be most improper.
Commotion how, Father?
Gwendolyn, I know I have told you they are turtle fuckers, but perhaps I have not been clear. They are turtles. Literal walking turtles. They are a hideous sight, and everyone can see them. I truly wish one of the more beautiful races had reached out. The elves, perhaps, but instead we get these turtles, and one of them is apparently terribly smelly and a little bit mossy.
Well, Father, if this helps. When you said turtle fuckers, I literally picture things that fuck turtles constantly. So this is mildly better, no?
And like the Phil Hartman like thin grin spreads over his face, just like a completely flat grin. He's like, "Oh, jolly good, constantly fucking turtles, ha 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 ha, like you, Archibald." And he just points arbitrarily at like a guy who's clearly representing like the chefs union, and Archibald's just kind of like. Yeah, that's me, Your Highness. Always fornicating with turtles. Can we start the meeting, please? I've got bread. I gotta take care of. And he's like,
classic baker, just bringing his deliveries to union meetings.
He's a bread chef.
Yes, you know
the famous breaths of Orval.
Yes, the breaths of Orville. So he's like, yeah, how like a breath to ignore a good turtle fucking pun. Ha! In any case, that does make me feel somewhat better, although we will have to clean the entire palace once these repellent creatures are gone. How is... And he kind of like nods. He does a theoretically subtle nod that is very obvious to Nikos. And then like waits expectantly.
All is as it should be, Father.
Here's a question, Laura. Do you actually believe that?
I hope so.
Yeah, go ahead and roll me a deception check.
Deception. 13.
His thin grin becomes a thin frown. And says, the breaths have begun to get mouthy, as you can see, and if those bread fuckers are getting mouthy, it won't be long before the rest of them do. Do keep him in line. He is your younger brother, after all.
As is my duty, Father.
All things in their place, my dear. And turns back around, he's like, you may all sit, for I, too, shall sit. And then he goes and sits, and everyone, it's not like a unified, like, oh, good, the king sat. It's everyone being, like, slightly frustrated, being like, oh, fine, all right, fine. So as everyone plunks down, Laura, Gwendolyn is filled with just yet another slight sense of a sinking feeling, to some extent, in your stomach, as you look over this court that one day you'll be destined to rule, full of assholes you don't care about, and rituals that make very little sense to you. Nikos comes up to your shoulder. You can hear that the delegation is almost upon you. What is your last word of advice, command, or threat before the delegation from Bleen arrives?
I just whisper in Nikos' ear, like, listen, Nikos, if you're good, I'll give you a cookie. And it's kind of sarcastic.
Fool me 50 times, sister. Shame on me. Fool me 51. Shame on you. I know you won't give me a cookie. And then he crosses his arms.
Just be good, you idiot.
I did it all for the cookie. What?
Oh, boy.
Now.
I mean, yeah. So, Duncan...
His name is Nico Kim Durst.
Duncan, you are you've left Bitter and Sons, and you're kind of back on the street as you kind of walk through the alleys and things of the docks. You can hear the sort of delegation moving through downtown, and I think you're close enough that if you take kind of a couple back streets, because like you've been in this area long enough, you kind of got relegated here as like it's a little bit like when you're in the CIA and they send you to like Switzerland and they're just like, just go hang out there. This was you being sent to the docks. It's a rough place, but there's no reason for any Dawnbreakers to be there. This was just like get you away.
Out of the way. Yeah.
But as a result, you've gotten to know these back streets pretty well. So you're able to kind of duck through them. and you're able to see this delegation. And despite yourself, a small grin spreads across your face. Because, man, you fucking always want to see a turtle. And no matter how much other figurative and literal shit gets flung at you today, at least this has been good. So what goes through Duncan's head as he observes these sort of strange creatures walking?
Okay, so I'm imagining if he was watching them, he probably would have gone like back streets and then got onto a roof. I don't feel like he'd be standing with a crowd of onlookers. So it's like him up top, the classic like 1 foot kind of on the sill, doing that like Stratford Shakespearean acting lean. But for him, it's not performative. It's just how he stands.
That's what they say at Stratford too.
Yeah. He's the 800 years later, he will be the argument on how people should stand in classical plays. I think he just would sort of take it in. Like the tragedy would be that he doesn't get to talk to them. And another tragedy would be that he guessed the wrong languages to learn. Because I feel like when he joined the Dawnbreakers, he thought that he would get to deal with the people of, what's the name of the world?
Of Gren.
Of Gren, yeah, because he knows the proper names of shit. That's his thing. Ryan doesn't, but he'll learn them. But he actually spent a lot of his time in his early career learning Elvish and Dwarven, neither of which will actually serve him here because those were the two that were thought to be most likely to communicate. So instead, I think he's just trying to figure out like their ranks, the things he can figure out about their society. And I think instinctively, despite the fact that he has kind of abandoned a lot of his training and beliefs, he'd also be measuring them up as warriors. Like, if this goes bad, what happens if a turtle... Like, what do you do if you have to kill a turtle? And then he doesn't like he's thinking it, but it's in there. So,
the first thing you notice when you're looking at them is and obviously you don't know his name, but you notice First Blade Kell. Because he's carrying a giant, like, Final Fantasy-sized sword over his shoulder. 2 hands on the pommel, and his hands are already pretty big, so this is a big fucking sword. And I think as a combatant, you would immediately size up the shell and understand why it's slicked, and also I think immediately gain kind of a degree of respect for the turtles, that they're savvy enough fighters to realize their natural advantage could also be a disadvantage. Because, like, looking at the Presidentia, who you don't recognizes that other than she's got a lot of gold on, her shell has a lot of like points, which could theoretically be used as an offensive measure, but like badly. So it makes sense that the warrior has adjusted his physical self to be more adept at combat. That said, and it's partially just a bias about turtles, you suspect he's slow. He probably hits like a fucking bus. But with a sword that big and a shell that big, there's not going to be a ton of dexterity. It's going to be elegance, finesse, and strength. Then your eye kind of drifts to a turtle who looks very different from the other ones. If you were to guess, based on kind of your understanding of adventuring parties, probably the mage, because he's gray, his shell is black. He looks like markedly different.
Yeah, I was going to say, Duncan might literally be worried that guy is sick. Like, if they were here to save their people, it's like, is there an illness affecting turtles?
Yeah, and unfortunately, in your earlier career, you got, like, the black envelope updates, like the President's Eyes Only shit, and now it's like, yeah, it's like, mind your own business, Duncan. Have you cleared out the streets yet? No? All right, go get at that, man. We got shit to do. So your eye, you immediately worry that maybe he's sick, that maybe he's brought some kind of disease or plague. However, you then see him kind of fix his eyes on the famed armor of Solaris, which is something you've spent ages staring at since you can remember. You've been fascinated by the story of kind of the Bringer of Dawn and how she put the Dawn Breakers together, and you don't aspire to be her. That's never been it. But the fact that she created the order that you used to believe in so fervently is something. So I'm a huge nerd. Whenever I go places in like IRL, usually one of the first things I do in any new city is, like, if I see a statue or a plaque, I'm like, I'm gonna read it. So I think for you, it's kind of the same thing. It's like you're actually seeing, even though these creatures seem incredibly alien, someone actually stop and take note of something that you value and treasure and almost hold sacred. Actually touches you in a way you weren't really expecting to have to feel today. And you see like a kid run up, and you were that kid. Like if 40 years ago that was you. And you see him kind of give a sense of reverence and attention to the armor before being dragged off by his fellow delegates, who now approach the palace doors. These are doors that you used to like Aragorn your way through all the time, not because you had to, but because you could. It still kind of hurts to be very much like the orphan in a Christmas movie, like pressing your face up against the glass. But at times like this, you're grateful for the distance. How do you think you spend the next little while? We're going to cut to inside the palace in a moment, but I kind of want to figure out, like, what do you think Duncan's, with everything going on right now?
I think Duncan, because the crowd would probably either close in on the palace or, like, leave. It's a big deal that the turtles are here. That's pretty wild. And like duty, it's a scam job. He knows it's a scam job. Half the time he's the one having to kick in the door and like demand protection money so that he can raise funds. It's the gangsters are not a problem. I think he would probably go down and sit at the statue. In the hopes that the turtles would leave and go down the same path. And if that one turtle who was interested wanted to hear a story of like an era before, he can be the one person to talk about humanity as it was supposed to be. Yeah,
all right, fucking love it. And it's, I think this is a thing you've done before. I don't know that maybe, I don't know whether it's when you're in your cups or if it's just like a thing you do, but I kind of love the idea that Duncan will occasionally position himself nearby so that he could. Basically, you're just waiting for someone to be like, "What's the deal with that armor?" You're like, huh. And I don't think you've done that in quite some time, but
no, I would imagine maybe 5 years ago when I got the job in the shit district, when I got like officially booted out, or whenever I got booted, there was probably like an I got drunk night. And at like 2 a.m, I went and just yelled at the statue.
Yep.
And I have not visited it or spoken since.
Yeah. I love that.
And this is like a begrudging sit with the statue.
Well, and it's also, I think it's different now too, because it's like the turtles may never come back, so there's one chance to tell them what we should have been.
Yeah.
So that they can take that back. Yeah, cool. Love it. Great. So the turtle delegation from Bleen arrives at the palace. The doors are thrown open. There's great fanfare, and they are greeted by King Valdrin, who's like, "Oh yes, welcome, dear friend turtles. Turtles? How do you pronounce it?" And you can tell he knows. It's that like shitty thing where someone mispronounces your name. And Tyler, what I'm going to say is I'm basically going to play this scene out. However, I'm going to play the scene out the way the Presidentia assumes it's going to run. Feel free to cut in. You don't have to. If you feel like Maka would stay silent, feel free. But I also want to give you full freedom to interrupt if you feel so inclined, because what they think is going to happen and what you are here to accomplish are very different things.
Well, what's going on in here in this room? Because I feel like Maka might want to just kind of putter around while everyone's talking.
Get
into shit.
It is basically the doors open into the room that Gwendolyn is standing in. So a large, kind of high-ceilinged, beautiful sort of council room. There's sort of an upper deck that is. You can see guards posted at with bows, dawnbreakers. You don't know what those are, but they all are wearing like what seem to be gilt gold bracers, and are dressed in kind of all various. Like there's not one uniform. All the dawnbreakers kind of come with the equipment most comfortable in. However, these ones are all wearing golden cloaks over their kind of mixed armor, which to you looks very impractical because shooting a bow with a cloak on is kind of a dumb idea in the best of times. It looks nice, but you don't really brook that bullshit. And then there's a massive table in the center of the room that is sort of ringed with people who seem to be wearing, for lack of a better term, ceremonial stereotype garb. So you wouldn't recognize any of these, I don't think. But, like, it seems as though everyone, to a modern eye, like, the bread chef is wearing, like, a fucking Chef Boyardee outfit.
Okay.
But if it was designed by Versace, like it's a fancy ass, like formal version, and they look to you like costumes. These don't look like people's clothes.
Tom, to
Right.
make a movie comparison, is this like a fantasy version of everyone's outfits in Demolition Man?
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good comparison. Or like if you imagine every character from The Simpsons, who is like the thing they are, it's
Right.
that. But
Luigi's Pizza.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a
Luigi's
delightful
Pizza.
Italian
You
stereotype.
see how you scum.
Yeah.
As
But-
designed by Zoolander.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mugatu built all these.
Yay.
But it is worth noting that there is a sense of formality and pageantry to it that leads you to believe that no one wears this stuff home, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay.
You're not that
So-
familiar with clothes, but this looks impractical
yeah.
even for this dumb place.
So I guess I'm just kind of looking around, mulling over, like,
Did they get dressed up for us?
And like the records, do you say that out loud?
no.
Okay. All right.
But the always comes out. You always hear the
So tree beardy.
a little bit, yeah.
I love it.
I started with actually from The Simpsons, Jasper.
Oh yeah.
That's my inspiration.
Yeah.
But definitely Treebeardy as well. Treebeard in
That's
a
great.
big way for reasons that will
Pie.
reveal themselves. Yeah,
What an age to be alive.
that's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Very good.
For normal walking.
I'm assuming, looking around, everyone dressed in these uncomfortable looking, bright fabrics and shiny metals. I'm guessing my eye is ultimately drawn to the king and Gwendolyn. Are you here? I can't.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I am.
the king is
Are they the most fancy looking?
weirdly no. So what's basically happened is he has greeted you at the door. The throne is at the far end of the room. So across the table. You can see that the chairs would theoretically ring, and in fact there are stone chairs built into the ground that ring this, but the few directly in front are empty so that you have a clear line of sight to the throne. You get the sense, actually you don't really have royal knowledge, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
think.
like this is so my reference points are already so far removed from this that it's just like I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I would be drawn to that empty seat.
Yeah. Well, Gwendolyn, you know that Valdrin's game here is to seem incredibly gracious, while also showing off for the council. So you are still like standing just off of the throne, and of course Nikos is just like over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, Maka, I don't think you would have a clear answer on any of this. I think this might just be a puzzle, but you are rubbed the wrong way by all of this. This as one of the things I think that goes part and parcel with your cycle is the idea of taking things out of the cycle that can't be returned is uncomfortable. So a lot of the materials you're seeing essentially can't be recycled. So they are now no longer part of any cycle. They have been removed in order to be made into finery. Gwendolyn, you have seen the turtle people. The turtle people have arrived. There are turtle people, and they are here. What do you think your kind of emotional reaction to it is? Because I know there's a lot of like intellectual, like I'm on shift stuff that you can and would do, but as a as a person seeing creatures of legend for the first time, what's your reaction?
I think my inner dialogue is definitely like I say they really are turtle people. But
I guess to give you a better idea of kind of what we look like, turtles range from like 5 to 6 feet tall. And the average weight of a turtle is 450 pounds.
Okay,
they
so
are
like
not,
legit.
They are not fat per se. They are just fucking bulky, solid.
Yeah.
It's like Toka and
Like
Raja
Galapagos
from,
turtles just walking around, kind of.
Yeah.
Galapagos tortoises walking around, kind of. Yeah.
Like if Franklin were real, or if the turtles from Secret of the Ooze, like the snapping turtle, like that's how I've always imagined, like big and spooky.
So my kind of demeanor is to I'm not going to be deferent to them at all, but we'll give like, a head nod to acknowledge their presence.
So
because they're not fucking royalty.
Right?
Right.
At least you don't think so? No one really knows.
So. Whatever. They're on the ground, whatever.
Maka, you said you'd be drawn to the empty chair. Are you talking like the big empty chair or the little empty chairs?
It's got to be, it's the biggest chair in the room.
So you see a woman who seems to be wearing what you would assume are actual clothes. So to your question earlier about the pageantry, the King Valdrin, as the Philosopher King, is wearing almost like scholarly garb. So still like fancy Venetian court scholarly garb, but like he's not as done up as the rest of them, with the exception of an incredibly ornate crown that is small, so seemingly low-key, but like very expensive, clearly filled with... And you wouldn't, I think, have any idea about how much it would cost to make, but you sure as shit recognize the materials that are in it, being like, oh no, those are rare. Why would you put those in a hat? Like, what the...
Right.
No. So, and similarly, the woman you see kind of seemingly nod at you, and the smaller, angry one over her shoulder, she catches your eye. How do you respond to the nod, if at all?
I'll just loudly say, yes. Nod back.
Both Valdrin and Umos stop and, like, in classic slow, like the record skipped old saloon way, or like turn and look at you and then go back to their conversation. You can tell, because you've been around turtles, that Umos is speaking to him like he's a child.
Okay.
And you can see that he seems to be his chest is puffed out, and he seems to be really soaking this in. This is great. Gwendolyn, your dad's killing this. He is these turtles they're speaking slowly. They're clearly not very smart, and he is really in his element. So he says, yes, we could probably help you with your problem. We are, after all, a highly advanced place, as you've seen. But please, come, tell us of your troubles. Just step up upon the table there, and just tell us what ails the turtle people. And then he makes his way back around to the throne. You can see Umos is clearly, like, now she's getting it, and is frustrated, but she also thinks he might just be dumb. So she kind of like gets the Blade's help to like help her up on the table. And she kind of steps into the center and has to do that awkward thing where you're addressing a circle of people around you at your feet, where it's a lot of like her looking around, trying to figure out where to look. And she begins, yes, our people are experiencing some difficulties. Some, and she looks directly at you, Maka, more mystical of us claim it is a curse. We, however, of reason and science and commerce and business, believe it is instead an affliction. Some kind of rare disease that is affecting the residents of Bleen, and none of the other nations will help us. So we have risked the long-standing treaty, of which you are no doubt aware, to come seeking your aid in figuring out why our cures no longer cure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Maka will kind of look around and just out loud ask, who is in charge here?
Immediately, Valdrin, who's now seated on the throne, like, scoffs. And everyone points at him, but not excitedly. It's like pointing at Michael Scott and having to be like, it's him. He is our boss. He runs this place. And Valdrin kind of gestures grandly and says, I am the Philosopher King, ruler of the great floating kingdom of Orval. You may address your questions to me.
Did you forget that we were coming here today? Looking around, everyone seems dressed with such frivolity. And you are not.
He smiles, and he looks directly at Umos and says, This one seems quite intelligent. I can understand why you brought him. He seems to understand our culture better than you. Yes, dear moss-ridden disaster.
Maka.
Sure. I am the Philosopher King, first among equals, but still equal. And you can just see everyone at the table, like, if it's possible for a bunch of people to roll their eyes in unison while still doing it in their own ways, it's like an entire room full of gym takes.
Right.
And he proceeds to go on at great length about his how, his job is merely to guide the ideas of all the equals, and everyone has their own say, and the hierarchy doesn't exist, and blah, 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 blah. And you can see everyone kind of getting more and more bored.
And my eyes are just darting around the room looking at how each person is responding to this.
I think the thing you're getting the most is the only person who actually seems to be clocking anything is Maka. The rest of the delegation is in full diplomat mode, and there's nothing to read, but he has no walls. So he's giving you an honest take, and frankly, he's reacting to this kind of the same way you did the first day you came to council, expecting to see all of these like uniforms and costumes that have been handed down from generation to generation, but they used to be a mark of pride and are now kind of an embarrassing farce.
Right. There was a sense of history before where now there's only pageantry.
Exactly. And begrudging pageantry. It used to be like, I'm proud to represent the Brefs. And now it's like, oh, Jesus, I got to put on the stupid chef hat.
Yeah.
We just use bandanas. We don't need that. Okay. Anyway, quickly Umos regains control of this. And she's like, you will have to ignore him. He's new to everything, apparently. But he is also our failed healer. He understands the ways of life and death, and more recently, he has failed to bring us the cures that are the people of... pardon me, the low down, the down low, whatever you term you lowborn choose to use. We need our cures to work again, or there will be great death. And if you can help us, we will happily advocate for you, despite breaking several treaties to be here. So speak, failed one. Explain to them what is happening to us. So, Tyler, you've been living in the swamp for a long time, and can you tell me a bit about what Maka's kind of role in the swamp is, and kind of what you've been up to, and how you fit in with the rest of Bleen society?
Well, Maka in the swamp is carrying out a service for the turtle god of death, Jossi. And a very specific portion of the cycle of life and death is decay. And that is actually what Maka specializes in. The cycle of death yielding new life is a beautiful and powerful thing to him, and that is his wheelhouse. And so, as a hermit living in solitude in the swamps of Gren, his only contact with external turtles or turtle society is when they bring either their sick or their dead to him. They conduct their own funeral rites separately, but once they're finished, they bring a corpse to Maka's swamp island, where he assists with the process of breaking down corpses, and in that natural process, extracting nutrients, life force, and things like that, and in that way manipulates it into life-giving potions, spells, unguents, and things like that, that in turn the sick can benefit from. So he basically takes care of people after their final days, and extends the lifespan of others with those people.
Cool. So you explain all that, probably in more exhaustive detail that everyone kind of has to listen to. But recently, you've been finding that the cycle is beginning to break down. The sort of fungi and other things that you would extract from the bodies and from kind of the growth that would occur after you properly interred them is becoming less potent. It's yielding less, and if, for example, a precious liquid was previously gold, now it's kind of a grayish green. You can just feel the cycle breaking down, and you're not entirely sure why, which is part of the reason why when the consortium showed up on your doorstep, you went along with it. Yeah. So you explain that that's what's happening, and then Umos jumps in with a sort of slightly more complex version explaining like supply chain and the needs of customers who are waiting for these supplies and the vital purpose that the consortium serves. And eventually Valderin just kind of like, puts up his hands to stop it. And he says, "Yes, very good. I understand. You are well and truly turtle fucked. I understand. What's in it for us?" So they begin to negotiate. This is hell for you, Maka, because the money part is not something you're even really privy to. You kind of thought that everyone went away with these and then like used them in their cottages and villages, not shipped them around the world. So that's a little concerning. And you're getting ready to break into this when Gwendolyn, you standing kind of over, paying close attention to this negotiation, notice that one of the other turtle delegates, Shadows, doesn't seem to be in sync with his movements. He's a sort of thinner turtle, and he's holding a chest, but it's weird. You think it might just be a trick of the eye, but every time he moves, it seems almost like his shadow isn't moving with him.
I think I immediately... I think I just snap my fingers and I yelled like, "God, examine that turtle there, please," and just that's it. Like I have no patience for anything that's going to threaten like my father, my family, me, whatever. So
immediately, a Dawnbreaker like storms out of the wings, and she's just like built like a linebacker, just like a muscly, massive woman. With kind of like a double-handed axe over her shoulder, but also her gauntlets are heavy. Like she's got like basically brass knuckles as well. She rushes over, grabs the turtle kind of like by its arms, and the turtle is just like looks shocked. He's like, wait, whoa, hey, ho! He drops the treasure chest. It explodes. Gold flies everywhere, and she kind of like slams him against the table. She's like, "What's your problem, Turtle Man?" And to your horror, Gwendolyn, you see that his shadow didn't move with him. And almost faster than your eye can track, suddenly a figure leaps up out of the shadow with seemingly fingers made of blades, and slashes the throat of the Dawnbreaker, who begins to just gush blood onto the turtle, who is just screaming in that horrible, like, turtle way.
No.
And the figure drops, and you can see that she's a spindly woman with gray skin, pointed ears, no nose, and fangs, and her eyes are an eerie crystal blue. And you see the Presidentia turn and just yell, "The Covenant! The Shadow Mother betrayed us!" And suddenly shadows around the room, of whether it's of the pillars, of a couple of people who are there, suddenly these figures start leaping out of the shadows and just begin killing. So there are screams from throughout the room. Valdrin just looks at all of this and mutters, "Well, shit." And he turns to you and he's like, "Protect Nikos, get out of here, go!" And he is immediately, like, in classic, like, save the president way. A bunch of people just, like, pick him up and run him out of the room. However, he's got the Kin Solaris title. You don't. So you're left with Nikos, who's like, "Oh, balls, what do we do?"
"Run, you fool!" And I grab his arm and I make for the door as fast as I can.
All right, so you begin booking it for the door. Maka, you see this sort of unholy thing begin to occur. Weirdly, as a man of some mysticism, you are familiar with the Covenant of Kreket, which is the sort of coven of witches and assassins who rule the Shadowlands. They are powerful magic users, and have been with kind of there's been an uneasy truce amongst the people of the world for a while. You don't really know the details. You just know that back in your day there used to be a lot of war. These days there's less war. So that was a bit of a rude awakening when you awoke, which we will get to, of course, at some point later. But you know that it's basically a coven of people who specialize in tapping into mystical energies to become incredibly powerful sorcerers and assassins. So this is bad fucking news. And the Dawn Guard are quickly, the Dawnbreakers are quickly kind of like moving to attack, but this is quickly turning pretty bloody. Suddenly you see a young woman running toward you, and you notice that she's trying to protect someone, which is actually different from most of the other people in the room who are panicking and trying to save themselves. It's a classic, like, they're stumbling over each other, like knocking each other out of the way. But there's only one person who actually seems to be protecting someone, if slightly grudgingly, and they seem to be running towards you.
She looks like she's running to help someone, but she's running towards me.
She's got her brother, like, she's dragging Nikos behind her. Now. So where everyone else is like, I'm going to get mine, she's clearly the only one who's like, I'm bringing this person with me. Okay. And you see him kind of like flailing a sword behind him very dramatically.
Okay. And how, I'm assuming her dragging this other guy is a little cumbersome. He's not... Yep. He's not running with her. He's kind of... He's
half running with her, half stumbling, half trying to get into the fight. But also looking at him, he is not going to survive. Like, you're watching well-trained soldiers get ripped apart. Also, like, the first blade is like protecting Umos, but having a hard time. Okay. So this is definitely a bug out kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely. So I will run to meet her, and then take this young man's other arm, the sword arm, and lift him up just by like under his armpit and like keep pace with her.
Okay, wicked. Gwendolyn, suddenly you find that the turtle who you inadvertently greeted is helping you sort of carry Nikos. And the three of you kind of burst out of the doors into sort of back into the sort of large central walkway that leads to the palace. In the distance, you can see Solaris Square, the sort of center of town, and not knowing what else to do, you just begin running that way, bringing both the turtle and Nikos with you. Above you, the blue sky is beginning to darken. There is a massive swirl of clouds. Duncan, I think before you hear the screams, you see that, and it's very strange because usually the weather here is unnaturally nice. But there's a massive swirl of storm appearing kind of in the sky over the palace. And then as you hear the sort of first screams and things, you stand to ready only to see the doors burst open. And to your shock, you see your old ward, Gwendolyn, the gray turtle that you saw observe the armor, and Nikos, who you don't really recognize because I think, like kids of that age grow at like a particularly large rate, but like after a second you're like, oh shit, that's him, running alongside like a bunch of the other hierarchical council comes spilling out, and all of them are running towards you, pursued by blade-tipped fingers, and creatures seemingly leaping out of shadow. What do you do?
This is literally one of the moments he was born for. And there are a million forms of corruption and a million forms of self-delusion, but there's no question that shadow people with blades for hands killing civilians are worse than anything else in the kingdom. So I think it's simultaneously like the one arm comes up with the pistol and just fires while because I feel like the other shoulder cape kind of falls low, so the rapier is hidden unless it's going to be revealed, and then it's just swept aside and the rapier's up, and he'd book it for the princess and Nikos, no question.
Cool. So you begin to rush towards them, and these shadow figures are kind of like leaping out of the shadows and like almost loping, like doing that full like creepy, like both arms forward, grab the ground, drag yourself forward, kind of like leaping run. You, Gwendolyn, you see as you kind of run looking for any angle you can play here, you think you see your old protector, the safest place or person you could think of, Duncan, dear sweet old Duncan. But that would be impossible because, like, you're pretty sure you fired him or someone fired him at some point. And then your eyes lock and you realize he's actually there. What goes through your mind and what do you yell?
I think in a moment of panic, any familiar face that isn't running from the fight is someone I want. Yeah. I need help from. And I don't think I would dwell on our past relationship or the end of that for very long. It would just be like Duncan, please do something. A dark magic has befallen us. That's it. Okay, and then running.
Yeah, Duncan's training would be then to like almost take bodyguard style duty. Like, I don't know who this turtle is. I'll appreciate him. I'm sure he's useful. Also, he's got Nikos, so I can sort of cover Gwendolyn, I think, if I can. And then it's just getting them into a building. I want to get them out of the crowd and away from where the insane monster people are.
Cool. So you grab them and you start like ushering them towards a building. There's sort of a large, think like if you've ever been to like Banff or any sort of like tourist chalet town where it's just like the bottom floor is all like fancy gift shops and then the top floor is like a fancy hotel. So it's like a 5-story building, but it's got a lot of exits. It's got a lot of windows. Like it's not where you want to end up, but it's a good place to transition through.
Yeah.
You start leading them towards that when all of a sudden you hear a massive roar of thunder. And as you look up, a black bolt of lightning shoots from the sky and strikes the building. All of the glass shatters and blows outward. And a creature begins to walk out of the doorway. And your eyes have an incredibly difficult time seeing this thing. It appears humanoid in sort of shape and size, but every time the light hits it, it seems to refract in a different way. It's like looking through one of those crystals that just sort of shoots light in every direction. It's beautiful and horrible and disorienting. And you see it kind of move, and it moves almost like if you see oil on the surface of water, or the kind of like rainbow colors in a bubble. It's that kind of liquid movement. And you see its hands begin to shape into axes. And it starts stalking towards you.
Alrighty, I would spin my pistol out and give it to the princess along with like some rounds of ammo, and just be like, you're gonna need to shoot like I taught you back in the day. Turtle, keep the little man back and do what you can, but sometimes it's time for the dance of blades. And it's just the cape away and the rapier out, raised at it, and in the name of Amalakin Orval, it's time for you to either flee or face justice. Do you accept this challenge?
And you hear a remarkably high voice just sigh and say, "Oh, so glad at least some of you turned out right. Let's do your justice dance." And it leaps at you. Go ahead and roll initiative.
Oh boy. That's going to be a 4 for Makka.
15 for Gwendolyn.
That's a 9 for Duncan.
Sorry, Gwen, what did you get?
15.
And Duncan?
It was 9.
9? All right.
I just want to take this momentary pause to apologize for my accent to any native, English speakers.
Oh. I thought you were apologizing to
Yeah, Laura, if we were to stop and apologize...
This is extremely good.
If we were going to stop and apologize for every off accent I've done, that would just be the show.
And honestly...
I know, but you haven't committed to it for, months. And
Laura, I've committed to it for 5 shows. I think I have.
Of all cultures to apologize to for appropriating an accent, I don't think British is on the list of people we need to worry about.
I know, but still. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we'll sing God Save the Queen at the end of the episode. It'll be fun.
No one likes to have their accent butchered.
Well, you know what? You really are going to ruin anybody's ability to appreciate the work you're doing. Keep calling it butchery.
All right, let's cut this out of the audio recording.
Nope, staying in. This is who we are.
I take it back. Suffer, everyone.
Yep. So the creature is up first. It leaps at you. Duncan, what is your AC?
It's 15.
15?
Even though I'm only wearing a shirt and pants, I'm very dexterous.
So fast, though. All right, so it'll hit you with 1. And that will be 9 points of damage as it slashes across you. As it does, you can feel... It's a horrible feeling, but it's like getting hit by water. Like the blade actually almost splashes, but it still sears pain across your chest. You realize you're not bleeding, but you feel incredible damage, and the blade kind of rebuilds on the other side. As you look down, you quickly flick it away because you're hella dexterous, but the trace it left on you was actually beginning to spread.
Ugh.
So that was...
I am severely fucked up, just to be clear. I am on my feet, but I am barely not on them.
Yes, it seems like a dramatic supervillain just arrived. I don't know. Don't worry about it. Gwen, you've just seen the best fighter you know get soundly spanked by a weird liquid fractal monster. What do you do?
I shoot the weird fractal monster.
Oh, yeah, you do. So go ahead and roll ranged attack, please.
Okay, not my Duncan. Ooh, that's a
10. I don't think I have a... Do I have proficiency with this?
No.
'Cause
he trained you in it, but it's not... You're built
not a
for
pro.
you're built for diplomacy, not war.
Yeah. Fair, that's a 10.
So it's the classic like dodge this, and you blast the thing. You actually see you hit it squarely in the head. Duncan trained you well enough, but the bullet just kind of spins against this liquid surface, and then you see it absorb into it and disappear. For a split second, though, you can actually see flesh beneath the liquid exterior.
Oh.
You get the sense that this liquid, this sort of liquid armor might actually be a suit that this thing is wearing, not the creature itself.
Okay. Well, I think sensing I have no impact on this, I'm just going to redouble my grip on Nikos and run.
Cool.
In the opposite direction.
Brings us to Duncan.
Man, Duncan ain't going anywhere. This is it. Duncan is just going to kind of like stagger back, having been soundly whomped out the gate, and just be like, the most frustrating thing about this is you don't even know what my name means. And I'm meant to bleed. And then he kind of like whirls around, and it's one of those like because I'm going to use a swashing point for this. It's like he spins around with the cape as though the rapier is under it. Mm-hmm. And then the strike is actually coming from the opposite side towards the torso.
Sick.
Trying to sink kind of like under the arm. Now that I've seen there's a person in there, I don't know if there are plates. So he'd be as accurate as he could. Come on. Okay, that is a 22 to hit.
That will hit. Barely.
Dope. I'll take what I can get. Damage is not great, but the damage is 7.
So you sort of like slash at it. You actually do see that for a second the shimmering oil kind of dissipates. And you do see that you kind of like carve a line across some flesh. You can actually see there seems to be like almost a material under it, like it's wearing a doublet underneath. However, as you see the liquid seal back up over it, you can see it kind of almost leap inward, and you see the figure kind of lurch a bit, and you get the sense that your strike was not as effective as you'd hoped. Perhaps resistant, not as effective as you hoped.
Damn, my piercing. So, okay. Can I use my movement action to do something that might be unpredictable, Tom?
Sure.
Cool.
Man, I'm not going to stop you on that.
I have a bag of 1,000 ball bearings that came with my starter pack. And I would just like to dump them out on the ground to prevent it and or me from getting away quickly.
Okay. Cool. So I'm going to say that happens as the next kind of actions happen. But yeah, it's like,
the hand under the cape is just dumping ball bearings as the sword comes around.
Maka.
So the situation, as I understand it, is Gwendolyn is leaving with Nikos, which seems like a very good idea, given what I've just seen happen to Duncan, who is... in rough shape. You're not looking good, right?
I look very bad. Like, you would think that, like, almost anything would kill me now.
Okay. So then I will run over to Duncan, and I'll lay a hand on his shoulder, both to kind of pull him back, because discretion in this case may be the better part of valor, and also to cast Cure Wounds.
Sick.
So that's a touch spell. Just give me one moment to bring up all those juicy details. A creature I touch regains a number of hit points equal to 1d8 plus my spell casting ability modifier. Oh, baby! So that is a total of 10 hit points back to you.
Oh, man. That feels dope. Duncan is like, I knew I wanted to meet a turtle. Yeah. And he's busy pouring stuff and kind of keeping the axes away, but he's back full power, baby.
Great.
And I love being a turtle.
Anyway, we're going to have a lot of those, I think.
Yep.
I would love to position myself between Duncan and this creature and just hold my shield up and have my mace out.
Ryan, if I'm understanding your swashbuckling correctly, my guess is that would be impossible because all of your stuff is close fancy fighting. Is that correct?
It's all finesse, dexterous, like dance fighting stuff. So you
So-
can flank, but probably
yeah.
not.
So I like the idea though that since this is the first time the two of you have fought together, it is very much like I'm big and I can take the hit. So let me just get in the way there. And then also for you, Ryan, it's like, oh no, get this fucking turtle out of my way. I can't
Gotta get around
fight.
this turtle.
And similarly, for you, Maka, it's like, what? Why are you? No, you're squishy. Get out of here. Like, I got you, boo. Like, run.
Yeah.
Great. So the two of you are kind of locked in that. Top of the round, there are more bolts of lightning, and you can see these creatures start to emerge from all over the place. A massive one hits the top of the palace, and the top of the palace explodes and is blown off. You can see people screaming as they run out of it. You notice that the blade-fingered creatures of the coven seem to be working in accordance with these new creatures. So they're clearing the decks to kind of give more space for these things to arrive. Gwendolyn, you're running full tilt now. Duncan and this mysterious turtle seem to have decided to basically create a wall between you and the monster, and you find yourself running into the center of town. And you see the old armor that Duncan used to go on and on about. Your plan is basically like run past that. You know that beyond there's like a museum on the other side that has archives and things underneath that you can maybe hide in that aren't obvious targets because it's a museum. As you kind of like start to run closer to the armor, you actually feel Nico starting to tire. Like he's clearly like you can feel him getting slower and slower behind you. What do you do?
I can yell at Nico. So I'm like this is not the time to give up. What's wrong with you?
So you turn, and two things happen. First, you see him smile, which is odd because Nikos doesn't smile very often. And second, you feel the tip of his sword pierce your chest. And he drives the blade through you, and you stumble backwards into the armor, and he drives it through, impaling you against the chest plate. And he just leans in, and he says, "You're an embarrassment to your family. You're an embarrassment to your king. And you know, if you're any more embarrassing, you might find yourself dead." And he twists the blade. And there's a stunning bolt of lightning behind him. And out of this kind of blast of cloud steps a tall, liquid man clearly wearing the same sort of thing. But the liquid pulls away and you actually see a human face beneath. Think like late era David Bowie. So just like those incredibly sharp eyes, but has like seen some stuff. And he puts a hand on Nikos' shoulder, and he just says, "You did great, kid. I think we're going to have a lot of fun here." And he just leans around and he goes, "So sorry. I just came to take back what was mine." And he reaches down and grasps the top of the tether, and a pulse goes out through it. And you actually feel, as your lifeblood sort of gushes out of you, the ground beneath you begin to crumble. And then wings, like liquid wings, spread off the back of this man. He grabs Nikos, who just kind of waves to you, and carries him back up towards the palace. And meanwhile, Duncan, you hear the blade. You don't even hear what's happening, but it's just like years of listening for this stuff. You hear the blade and turn to see Gwendolyn impaled and bleeding to death, and the ground beneath her trembling and quaking. The entirety of Orval is shaking as the tether that has held it for so long begins to break. You can see these lightning bolts striking the wings as well. The entire city seems to be off balance. What do you do?
Okay, so I've seen Gwendolyn, who has been stabbed, who is at the center, and I have a turtle with me who can heal people. So the immediate rush is to get the turtle to the princess. And it's being like, I don't know who you are. You keep her alive. That's your only job. And then I just want to try to get him through, because I'm sure-footed, which means the movement penalty from difficult terrain is cut in half. I don't know if there's a way to trade it, but essentially I want to throw him clear of the ball bearings.
Here's what I'll say instead. I'll let you run him over there, and it's like half ball bearings, half the ground is shaking, and he's not like a nimble guy. So if you want to do a sure-footed thing, I'll say it's kind of like you bull rush him, but it's you kind of like maneuvering him. Maka, do you think you would let yourself be led like that?
Yes, I want to leave.
Cool.
I was healing him and pulling him back like, we should go.
So as you start to go, Duncan, you feel just like another like slash across your back, but you're running like this. The pain doesn't mean much. A second later, you actually feel a piercing stab through your shoulder. And again, like you've probably already picked this visual up, but very kind of T-1000. If I can't get at you up close, I'll just extend. So you kind of turn back over your shoulder to see a woman kind of half clothed in this sort of fractal liquid, and she's extended one arm out and it's become a spear, but she's clearly had to feed it with the rest of her. So kind of like her head and shoulder are just in kind of like a light doublet, but she's extended her arm. You kind of like managed to pull your arm out of it. The pain is intense, but you're still able to get the turtle to the princess. And Gwendolyn, kind of the last thing you see before it all goes dark is Maka just fucking collapsing on you with Duncan over his shoulder. And then as the life goes out of you, you feel the ground buckle. And for one brief moment, you're flying as the three of you plummet down to Gren.
Hi, I'm Ryan LaPlante, and I'm one of the crazy founders of Dumb Dumbs and Dice, the production company that's made the video you're watching or the podcast you're listening to right now. Now, we're clearly busy. We're producing 5 weekly podcasts, a 6th event podcast, video event one-shots, and an additional video D&D campaign. But we want to take this time to invite you to become a part of our company and a part of our Patreon at patreon.com/dumbdumbdice. You can get access to our Discord, access to exclusive DM and character chats. You can get the chance to name characters in our shows and vote on the way their stories will progress. You can even become a recurring NPC and hear yourself interacting with our characters each week through the voice of Tom. You can become a patron for as little as $1, and there's great value for you at even that level. So please, join the Dumb Dumbs and Dice family and help us make even more content in a way that you are guaranteed to love. That's patreon.com/dumbdumbdice. DUMBDICE. So let's do something dumb together, and thanks for being part of our stories.
With a crash of metal and noise and profanity, Gwendolyn, you die. And then you're cold.
Death row.
You're just so cold. And you feel weightless, and you feel just generally out of sorts. Your mind is remarkably sharp right now, but your all sensation in your body is gone. Your entire body has gone numb. And for a hot second, you are terrified that you have become a ghost. Because as much as you love being a rational person, you were still raised on Duncan's stories of heroes and legends, and like you're pretty sure ghosts aren't real, but then again, all that stuff was pretty horrible, and you're terrified for a moment that you'll just float through life as kind of an unmoored specter, and then you hear a voice, a kind of comforting voice. Just say, no, it's okay. There's room here. And then suddenly...
Does it sound like a man or a woman?
A woman.
Okay.
And then suddenly you open your eyes. But you don't really open them so much as suddenly you are seeing. And you're staring up at a sight that kind of breaks your mind a bit. The massive chain, the tether, is falling in the distance. And it's astounding watching something that heavy fall from the sky. And you can see chunks of the center of Orval kind of raining down on you and kind of from the sky as the center begins to collapse outward. Eventually it stops, but now there is a jagged hole in the center of your kingdom. And you see it kind of covered in smoke and darkness begin to drift away with the massive lightning-covered cloud over it following and slowly descending over the city. And in horror, you kind of sit up to try and reach for it, and you hear a metallic clank. And it seems every time you move, there's some sort of metallic clank. And it's then that you look down to see gauntleted hands very slowly, very meticulously moving and breaking out as you kind of look down to your hands. Everything feels gritty and slow, but also remarkably light and hollow. You can feel all of the physics of this, but there's no sensation to it. And it's then you realize that you're in the suit of armor from the center of town. But then looking down, you see sort of a gray dead body pinned to you. And you realize you're not in the suit of armor. You are the suit of armor. Maka, you've died before. This isn't entirely new.
The method is new.
Yeah, you've gotten a little bit better at it. So as your shattered shell begins to knit itself back together, as the spores begin to kind of do their work, you very slowly sit up to see a suit of armor screaming at its hands, and the shattered body of the swordsman Duncan that kind of like pushed you to safety, lying nearby. You seem to be sitting on a massive pile of refuse. Think like a giant pile of garbage. There's just discarded wood and metal and scraps. And just, you can't quite get your bearings yet. Your vision's kind of blurry, but you know from your years of being a healer what a rapidly dying body looks like. And Duncan he's not long for this world.
I'm not much of a doctor, especially to non-turtle kind, but does this broken man look salvageable? Does it look like I can save him?
Yes. You think if you are able to heal him now, he can likely pull through. It's going to be a bit of a recovery, but like...
I will set his body back into the shape I think I remember a man being. I mean, I was only up there for a little bit. So I'll assess my work and go,
He was something like that.
and I'll reach down and cast Cure Wounds.
Duncan, the last thing you remember was falling, and looking at the person that you had kind of pinned all of your hopes on die as you fell from the sky. You don't have any magic. You're a man of the martial habits. And unfortunately, as you fell, you realized that part of your coat was about to come true, but not in the heroic way you'd hoped, certainly not with the result you'd hoped for. Instead, with the ultimate failure, the hope of the future and the hope of the kingdom dying before your eyes. And it was with that thought that you hit the ground, and that was it. Until suddenly you were jolted awake and your body feels sore and awkward, almost as though you're a career fighter who I have to justify being level 1. You're in extraordinary pain. You're like, your leg doesn't quite turn the way you would expect it does. Like, it's like you've been in like a bad accident, but you're alive. And it's then you hear a scream of Duncan. And it sounds kind of like Gwendolyn, but also kind of not like Gwendolyn. And as you kind of struggle up, you see Gwendolyn's very dead body, but weirdly there seems to be someone inside the armor, kind of like looking around frantically in a vaguely comedic way. Because as you know, a suit of armor moving quickly and in a confused fashion, comedy gold. But you hear it scream in Gwendolyn's voice for you.
I'm still, Duncan just like thought he was dead and a failure, but also that was the end of duty and doesn't know. So I feel like it's that Warzone thing where like everything's a little bit slow and hazy and you're hearing the ringing 100%. In the ears. And I think he would stagger over, like sword, like the rapier out, kind of like pointed at the statue, but stagger over to the body of the princess just to see what's going on. Because if he made it, she could have made it. It's just like, tell me that you're in there. Come on.
I think as you look, you can see that the sword pierced her heart. Like, this was a perfect killing blow. And it's through to the hilt and has been twisted. So she's staring at you with glassy eyes. And she's kind of like facing forward. So her back is against the chest plate of the armor. You've seen enough dead people to know this is a damn dead body. This is very, very dead. The armor behind it, however, or whoever is in the armor, despite also having a sword through their chest, is hella pissed.
Okay, I would not have been entirely clear on what was being yelled. I would have assumed it was Gwendolyn's last words. So I'm gonna like grab my pistol out of where it was probably stuck, like in her sash or whatever, and just turn to the armor and say, "Whoever you are, get out of that armor right now, or I'm gonna put a fucking hole in you."
Duncan, it's me.
I don't know.
It's me.
I don't know. What sorcery this is. You can take the voice of my princess, but my mind is for justice.
And I like hearing these words thrown at me as like really hurtful and horrible. So I just fall to my knees and just with this like pleading arms and like, Duncan, it's Gwendolyn.
So you hear like, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. Meanwhile, like the princess's corpse is just like ragdolling.
You tell me something that only the princess and I would know. What was the oath I made you swear when you came of age?
And I
cock back the hammer.
Just to be clear, Gwendolyn is in shock, so she needs a minute. All right. And it was you made me swear to remember always the how Orval was first formed. Why Orval came to be in the first place.
All right, and he's a little staggered, and he just looks to the turtle, and he's like, "What did she just say? Did you hear it?"
Maka, you are actually at a little bit of a loss for words as well, because having just sort of touched Duncan and having brought him back up, what you can see that he seemingly can't is a glowing moon on his forehead that matches
Like
your
mine?
own. Yeah, and you get the sense that and sorry, it's JC or
Jossie,
Jossie.
I think, is what we said. Because JC sounds like a fucking...
It's me,
dumb name for some
JC.
reason.
What's up?
Will Smith's newest, shittiest kid.
That is also where my brain went. You see the scene of Jossie glow momentarily before dissipating, and you get the sense that the goddess of death wasn't quite ready for this one. And suddenly your estimation of him, but also how he fits into the cycle, has just shifted rather drastically. But then you kind of like see the gun and the fear.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I want more. I want more information before I do anything.
Cool. So, Laura, I think with an effort, partially in kind of like panic and just almost by instinct, you grasp the blade in your chest and just yank it out, allowing your body to fall. I think maybe you catch it and like lower it. But it's kind of a like panic, like I don't, like looking down at your own dead body is pretty fucking horrifying. So I think you're just kind of like, get it off of me. And Maka, you can see that the blood from the wound from her like heart essentially has stained the front of this armor, but also that the twisted cut from when the blade turned makes the same crescent moon.
Ooh.
And you see her kind of desperately implore Duncan with an oath around the formation of Orval, and I think perhaps this one is specifically about what Orval means, because Solaris didn't name the nation after herself. She named it after the caretaker of the mine, who
Orval
was
Redenbacher.
Yeah, Orval Redenbacher. Yeah, he was a popcorn man. She
From the popcorn mines.
yeah, the popcorn mines that also had copper. But yeah, in the copper mine where she worked, there was just like a caretaker named Orval, and his like all he did was like clean up after the people, the miners. But he was the only person who showed her warmth and kindness. And when she went back to find him after the war, he was long dead. So rather than name the nation for herself, she named it for the virtues that she thought a nation should have. And that's not a term, that's not knowledge that's actively known anymore. That's sort of the myth of Solaris is so large that Orval has just become like a term that is vaguely confusing to most. But yeah, that is, Duncan, I think that's one of your favorite pocket facts, is that the kingdom wasn't named for royalty. It was named for like a kind old man.
It was named for a nobody, essentially.
Yeah, it was named for a nobody,
the greatest and least of us. Yeah,
who wasn't even like, and it wasn't even that his job is what made him great. It was just that he showed kindness to those around him.
Yeah, so I would turn to the turtle and just say, what did she, what did it say to you? Do you hear that?
I hear you speaking to the armor of Amala, yes?
Yeah, yes, we'll get into how you know that in a minute, but what did the armor say back? When I said, what was the oath, what did it say?
It said to think on how Orval came to be, and how Orval was named.
Damn it. And he'll just like cock the hammer on the pistol and sit down and be like, it could have just been a construct and that'd be fine. It just says what you want to hear and you'd have heard turtle words and I'd have heard that. What?
Is that what I wanted to hear? No.
Okay, you seem to have some sort of magic to you. I don't know magic. I know sword dancing. What is that? And I just point at the construct over the princess's body.
Well, I may be able to divine some answers for you, but, well, this vessel of mine is quite tired and drained of its magical energy. I can only guess at What is happening here?
I'm getting like 1 word and 3 out of this.
You hear
I'm tired.
you hear a blaring klaxon that seems like like the old timey like police or fire sirens. That someone's like, well, I'm thinking like even the worst one. It's like that. It sounds like a cat being run through a washing machine.
It's an auditory treat for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah. Of what other noises do we know? So you hear several of those, and they all seem to be run by different sources. And then you hear sort of a chorus of voices yell, "Robbers! We've got robbers!" And all of a sudden, kind of up, climbing over, and this like garbage pile goes on for a while. Like this is a massive heap. You see just these filthy humans in like they're just like sweaty and covered in oil, wearing very like hardy like coveralls, and various like mixed pieces of not necessarily armor, but just sort of like hardier clothing, and like goggles, and wearing like kind of respirator masks, come up over the garbage heap, carrying weapons, and they're like, "We earned this territory fair and square. Go fuck yourselves!" And they rush to attack you. Roll for initiative, please.
18 initiative for Maka.
Not
19.
that tired. Seems pretty awake.
Wait till you see what he does on his turn.
14 for Duncan.
Okay, and then I've got them. Okay. So top of the round. Gwendolyn, you still don't quite know what the fuck is going on, but you are shocked to see these humans come kind of like climbing up over this pile. As far as you know, humans only live in Orval. And you also don't know where this is or what it is. You kind of had an idea of what the down low would be, but this isn't it. And it's too much wreckage to just be what fell with you. But either way, you really got to address these people swinging monkey wrenches at you first.
Yeah.
So ignoring the existential crisis of the body at your feet, you turn to face them, and by instinct you go to drop the sword. But for some reason, the sword of the Elos blade seems almost like stuck to your hand. Almost like you open your palm and it seems hesitant to leave. And oddly, it feels comfortable. And to some extent, it feels right. Which is good because one of the scavengers is rushing at you with a crowbar in each hand. And he's wearing glasses and like an orange jumpsuit. And he's coming in swinging. What do you do?
I think I kind of revert to my natural instincts, which is just to yell, "How dare you! Kneel before your princess, don't attack her!" and just do like a massive swing, like across.
Great, love it.
Oh, man. I am in love with Armor Haunted by the Ghost of a Princess so much. Gwendolyn, oh my god. It's so good.
I like that it's just demand for fealty combined with murder. Like, it's just kneel before stabbed already, like can't follow through.
Admittedly, much easier to kneel if you're dead.
I mean, parts of you are just going to lay down.
Exactly.
But she's not even like trying to like kill them. It's more. It's like just a wide like flailing. It just has no. Kind of like I'm doing right now. If you're watching the video, just like I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, Duncan knew how little you'd practice the sword, so he focused on just pistols, just bang bang. Yeah. Fine.
Well, and
I don't think she ever learned how to fight with a great sword. Like.
And yet somehow, perhaps this armor knows. Go ahead and attack, please.
Yeah. All right. That is 12 to hit.
Fuck, I think that actually does hit. It's weird. I haven't run a level 1 campaign in a while. Let's find out what AC is like. Yes, that hits.
Okay. And that'll be 8 slashing damage.
8 slashing damage. So you can see the scavenger almost like as soon as it happens, it's like there's a look of confusion on his face, and then the blade kind of slashes across him. He stumbles to the side. He's still up, but very grievously hurt and confused because he definitely didn't think he was going to have to fight a knight today. And as he looks you up and down, he says, "What manner of scavenger are you?"
I'm not a scavenger! Why are people saying all these horrible things?
Great. Next up, we've got... lost my page. Too many pages.
I think Maka scored 1 less, so it might be Maka.
Why I do. It is indeed Maka.
Let's cast Poison Spray on one of the other humans running towards me. This has a range of 10 feet, so I want to cast it even before he gets to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of confused that these humans are yelling at us now. I mean, there's 2 humans right over here. I don't understand how we could be in trouble. We just landed here. And so as he comes running, clearly brandishing a weapon, I'll just put up one hand and cast out a bunch of spores. He needs to make a Constitution saving throw. He needs to beat a 13, I believe.
Oof. Yeah, no. Okay. Not by a long shot.
So that is unbelievably, for a cantrip, 1d12 poison damage. I rolled a 1, so it's 1 damage.
Much more believably for a
That's
cantrip.
the thing.
I believe it now.
Yeah.
So he's running up, and the spores just kind of come off you. And I think if we're looking at the camera angle of you doing it, it's like a beautiful, the fucking magical flyy things in Avatar. It's just mystical and lovely. For him, it's just this giant turtle's and he's just, oh God, oh, that tastes terrible. Not deadly, just bad. That just, I live in a dumpster and that tastes bad, man.
That's perfect because that's really the opening Maka's looking for. Just
slow down there, friend. What seems to be the problem?
Problem is, you're trying to steal from my dumpster. And we jump to, I believe that is you, Ryan. Yes, Duncan.
All right, so we got how many scavengers, Tom?
So there are 4 scavengers who are kind of coming up from over the garbage heap. And basically, in the turn, in the surprise round is them closing distance. So they're all will be within... The Death Star will be within firing range by their turn. So they are within martial distance. You don't need to walk over them. Although at this point, it's more of a stumble than a walk.
Yeah, I think I want to dash over to where I don't even know what to call her now, but where the shambling pile of armor is that's fighting. And just yell, "No one gets to damage that armor!" And I want to go at the same one that Gwendolyn hit, who's still standing but going at the armor. And the whole goal is coming in because he's lacking his normal fantastic success, but he's still got a lot of heart. The goal is to swing the rapier around and essentially bat the guy's weapon away and reverse and just run him through with the rapier point.
Yeah, right. So he's got the crowbar raised high over his head, and admittedly, pretty good weapon for dealing with a knight's armor if you've got some time, and you rush in. Go ahead and roll your attack.
All right. That's a nat 1. I'm very injured.
Yeah, so you rush in. You say, no one gets to hurt that armor. You go to knock the crowbar away, but he did say he's got a crowbar in each hand. So you knock one away, and he just bats your sword to the ground with the other. And as you stumble... I'll say he knocks you prone off your 1, and can you roll me a wisdom save, please, as you stare at the dead princess who you're trying not to think too much about, but you get knocked into looking directly at her.
It's a 14.
there's a spark in you that truly believes that she is the hope of this country and possibly this world. And if this armor is her, then that's just a sack of meat. You shake it off and start to like awkwardly try and get up. But when I say prone, I don't mean you're like, oh no, I'm laying down. Like for our purposes, it's really like you're in a lot of pain and someone knocked you to your knees. But
yeah, I was knocked to the ground, but I can
mechanically
get
you're
back up.
prone. But yeah, great.
That like one knee, one hand. Look at her.
And also just like every part of you hurts because you fell from the sky earlier.
Yeah, the ringing in my ears gets louder again because I got clocked one. Yeah,
you can hear the platoon theme just like starting to rise. You're like, no, get out of here. That brings us to the scavengers. Okay, so Dr. Freeman there with the crowbars is going to take a swing at you, Gwendolyn. Given that you're a suit of armor, this seems like a silly question. What's your AC?
My AC is 18.
What's your skin? Okay. So he...
Level 1 AC is 18. That's bonkers.
Oh, boy. He swings his crowbar with all of his might. And it just, like, tings off the armor. Again, it's rough looking armor, but it's holding together. So literally the crowbar bounces off and he does that thing where his arm, like in a Jackie Chan film, where like his arm trembles and he's like, ow! It's like he hit a bell.
My heart.
Oh
Yeah.
man, between the haunted armor and a Jackie Chan reference, you got everything Tyler wants.
Oh, seriously, dude. Loving this campaign so far.
Got your back, brother. Okay, and then the guy, Maka, that you attacked is going to close distance with you, and he's going to, he's got like a, I'm just going to stick with the Jackie Chan motif, I guess. He's got kind of like a large rake that he's been using to kind of like dig through the trash, and he's going to like swing it around him as a bow staff and take a raking slash across your face. And as he does so, he's like, time to take out the trash! The turtle trash! And he swings. What is your AC, sir?
Mine is 19.
Damn!
I've got
well,
natural armor with a shell, and I'm holding a shield.
His paltry 17
Shit, man.
won't hit you. So you get your shield up in time, and you hear like that horrible like.
Yeah.
And he seems bummed out by it. You both, like all three of you are in more pain than any of this would think, but they're all fresh. They're just at work. So his rake goes by, and he's like, "Guys, we're gonna need some more time to take out the turtle trash." And then he falls into a fighting stance. Brings us to the other two guys. They see that their friends are kind of getting roughed up, so they're just gonna start throwing trash at you. The first guy is going to aim at Duncan. Duncan, what is your AC?
15.
15. All right. He will hit you. Barely, but he will hit. And you're going to take 5 points of damage.
Holy shit, that's heavy trash.
Yeah. I mean, look,
It's
these
just
guys.
a big piece of chain.
Well, I was going to say, these guys have defended this trash heap for a while. So yeah, he like, well, sure, chain's great. I was gonna make it something jagged, but yeah, he just like picks up like a bunch of chain and like fucking shot puts it at you. Yeah, it just you're already on the ground. It just hurts so much. And then the other guy is gonna throw a brick at the turtle. Oh man, he misses by 1. That AC is bananas. So he throws a brick and it shatters against your shell. And he's like, "Stupid garbage bricks! No wonder they threw these out." Which brings us to top of the round. Gwendolyn.
I think it's literally just continue the slash from the other direction because she's just like swinging for whatever.
Well,
I don't know.
it worked.
I don't know what's happening.
Just imagining it's like a Donald Glover from Community, just be like, I don't want it.
My emotions.
Yes. My emotions. Yeah. So go ahead, Laura. Roll for that. Roll for that backswing.
Natural 1.
So yeah, you swing with the broadside. Again, you've never fought in this, nor have you fought in this body. This is a weird thing someone brought up about lightsabers, but they're like, using a lightsaber would be incredibly difficult because there's no blade. You're literally like the only weight in it is like a flashlight you're holding. So it'd be incredibly hard to fight because you don't have any sense of where it is. You have the same problem because you're used to having internal organs and a spine. Instead, you're a hollow suit of armor. So I think it's like the strike wasn't that bad, but you stumble off to the side. And I'm going to say you trip over Duncan, and now you also are prone.
Great.
And as your head turns, you also see your corpse, but you can't handle that right now. This is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, let's say I get hit by the chain and then step aside and get kicked by the armor that falls over me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so injured.
You have a hot second of the Austin Powers, like, who throws a chain? And then just like there's a boot to the face. Great. That brings us to Maka.
So I've taken this in and kind of reassessed the situation, and I'll say,
Oh, I see. You're defending your territory. I've seen it many times in nature. We both know what comes next.
as a bonus action, I will cast Shillelagh. Is it Shillelagh or Shillelagh?
Shillelagh.
Shillelagh? I'll cast Shillelagh on my mace, which was
Does
basically
me Irish heart
just...
proud.
It was basically just a gnarly root with like just a knot of wood at the end, hard wood, and with Shillelagh, thorns just jump out of it all at once, and I will swing on him with my now magic mace. So I'm going to roll to attack. That's a nat 20.
That
First
is
of the campaign. Pew, 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 pew.
different from those other two nat ones.
Yeah. So that is rolling damage die twice?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. So that's, because it's a shillelagh now, instead of a d6, it's a d8. So d2, d8, 7, outstanding. And a 3 for 10, plus 5, 15 damage. Magic damage, if it matters.
Yeah, they're liches. Garbage liches. You swing the shillelagh, and as you do so, he just he looks at you and he's like, he's got his rake and he's like, aha, I've got a cool stick too. And then it gets spiky and he's like, not that cool. And then the spikes just clock him in the side of the head, and his head just like a ripe melon, just he looks at his own spiky stick as the light goes out in his eyes, and he collapses. And I think you just have to like put a big old turtle foot on him and just pop it back out. Yep. He is very dead.
Cool. Yeah,
he is overkill dead.
Pop that thing at him, kind of roll my shoulders, and be like,
Yes, it's been a while.
and I'll just look at the next guy and start walking towards him.
He'll yell, "Oh no, it's one of them murder turtles!" That brings us to
a Myrtle.
Oh, that's what Myrtle Beach was named for.
Yep.
So many murders. Duncan, you're on the ground. You just got kicked in the head by a suit of armor that might be your dead, like, pseudo daughter.
Yeah, I'm like on the ground and I just look up at the crowbar guy and I'm like, "Hey, what's your name?"
My name's Dr. Gordon Freeman. That's why I've got these crowbars and these glasses.
I knew I recognized that name.
Thanks. Dr. Gordon Freeman, it's time for me to properly introduce you to Mr. Bang. And I just flip my cape aside and fire my pistol at his head.
All right, go ahead and roll.
Mr. Bang.
He's not a doctor?
No, he's only got an MA.
That's a 16 to hit, Tom.
That'll hit, yep.
That does 8 piercing damage.
It's a shame he didn't get his doctorate in dodging. His head explodes, like it goes through like the glasses, so it blows through one, and his head just like explodes in a blast of red mist, and he falls backward, having lived his half-life to the fullest.
And then I would like to backwards clumsily roll over the armor to take cover behind it. I'm like, sometimes discretion's the better part of valor. Yeah, it doesn't look good. It's just, it was intended to be a roll, but it's just sort of a weird slump over it.
No, I love it. Great. Okay, cool. You can have cover from Gwendolyn. So the other two scavengers look at the murder turtle, who's like gleefully starting to march towards them. They've just watched their smartest friend, although again not versed in dodging, get his head blown off. And the turtle is also like they've never seen anything like this. They're horrified. So they start like the one guy is like he picks up some more chain and like looks at his friend, and his friend kind of gives him a look like, "No, man, it's not our garbage heap anymore." He as they start running away, you see the one guy put his hand on the other guy's shoulder. He's like, "Don't worry about it, Jake. It's garbage town." And then they run off. So you have a rare moment of respite to kind of get your bearings. And sure enough, there is kind of garbage, not quite as far as the eye can see, but like Garbage Town seems to go for quite some ways in every direction. You can see small shacks and kind of sorting centers that have been set up. But also perhaps most interestingly, you can see there are just beyond it, you can see kind of a number of long cables that are also starting to like fall, almost like streamers that have been launched out of like a party cannon from the sky. And with them, you can actually see small carts that have been attached to these cables falling as well. Gwendolyn, it never really occurred to you where the materials for all of the things that Orval builds come from. You kind of assumed there was processing and mining on somewhere in the nation, but it now, as you watch these cables start to snap, occurs to you that they're actually coming from the down low. So looking out in every direction, you can see a variety of these sort of scavengers going about their business. And you get the sense it'd probably be a good time to clear out of here. This doesn't seem like a particularly safe place. What do you do?
I think I'm still like beside myself with like
literally.
Hey! Oh, me and unintentional puns. I think it's just like I get up. I try to like get up and start walking in a direction. I'm totally lost.
Would you bring your body with you?
No.
Oh, damn. All right.
No, it's just like I am in such an incredible amount of shock. I am not thinking
So
right
Duncan,
now.
I think it's safe to say that you would probably loot the corpse.
I would take the whole corpse. Like
okay.
it would just. I'm injured, but I'm like, I got to do the duty, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know if we could put her back in the corpse. Like Duncan knows rudimentary magic as taught to a duelist who might have to fight or assassinate a mage. That's it, and he's not got a lot of experience in that.
Right.
So I think he'd pick up the corpse, and he'd probably just be like, "Hey, princess," just try to get her to go towards the easiest way out of Garbage Town. Like if there's a closest way to like woods or somewhere we can hide.
You can see on the edge there does seem to be an outcropping of woods with like a fence. So you kind of make your way there. With some difficulty, you manage to get up and over the fence. It's a weird combination of like if this was a video game, it would be a lot of like press X to do this thing where you hold your hands out so your friend can step on it. Like, oh, it's co-op. So you manage to co-op video game your way over the fence. And kind of stumble off into the woods. As you kind of make your way into the woods, you find a small cottage that seems to have been abandoned. And it's a little bit overrun, a lot of moss and vines. Honestly, for you, Maka, this is pretty par for the course.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah. We're having Tyler's cat Luna is doing some amazing guest work that you can see on the video stream.
Tyler's real life familiar does not care for this game.
So you make your way sort of over towards this cottage, and you kind of like check, and it looks like no one's been here in a while. There's some animal tracks around it, but nothing much. Also, this is strange for you, Gwendolyn. I don't think you've ever necessarily seen an animal other than a bird. There are plenty of birds, but there's no other real animal life in Orval. So you kind of make your way into the cottage, and again, it seems like a place you could kind of rest up and kind of take stock. Duncan, I feel like you would be the one to get a fire going.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe bet.
And I think with a quick look around, Maka, you're able to find some like some stuff you could probably turn into medicinal sort of pastes and unguents. But that said, you're all pretty beat, and the princess has some existential stuff. So you all have a minute to catch your breath. What do you do?
What does Duncan do with the princess's body?
I think he'd like want to look it over to try to look at like compare, because he's more a duelist than like a traditional police officer. Like it's typically more for like, this lord is out of line, I need you to go deal with this lord, is kind of the Dawnbreaker way, as opposed to there's been a murder, you should forensics the scene. So he's out of his element, but I feel like he would if the princess is just like sitting there forlorn, he would set up a fire and then be like comparing the body to the construct to see if there's any clear link, or if there is like, he probably checked to see if she had like tattoos or if there were symbols. Like he's got very, very rudimentary understanding of what magic essentially could be. How much magic was there in Orval, Tom? I imagine not a ton.
Not a ton. There was a little bit, but it wasn't active. Here's the thing. It was actively practiced a long time ago. It became, I think if we're actually using like mechanical terms, it became less and less like leveled spell slots and more cantrips. Like it became people who were incredibly good at thaumaturgy, or like who could bend water into like dragons, but there was no practical application. Everyone was just living it up with, and this was true of the fighters as well. Like you took it very seriously because you believe in the idea of duels, but most duelists, it was more for like show fighting. It was more gladiatorial. Like I'll go in there, we'll have some flashy swords, and then everyone kind of knows how it's supposed to go. So like, fuck it, we'll just sue them if it goes badly.
Yeah.
Kind of like what bending is in The Legend of Korra.
I haven't seen Legend of Korra, but sure.
Oh,
so we'll
probably.
just say yes. Yeah, because I imagine, so then he would know what he'd read in books, and I feel like, yeah, he might have seen a little bit of that showy stuff, but doesn't really have experience. It's like he's seen more of the world than Gwendolyn, because he probably had to do a tour on the wall for a bit, but he never left.
No,
if he did.
None of the Dawnbreakers who were assigned to the city have ever left. So you've heard of the wall, you've probably talked to some people from the wall, but you've never left Orval.
Great, then yeah, this is all totally theoretical, but I got to deal with the princess thing first, and then my sense of wonder about the world second.
Yeah, cool.
So before I get into what I'm about to do, how invasive is your examination of the princess's corpse?
Well, I mean, I'd be all over it. It's not like I'd like leave it alone. Like I gotta go through and do kind of like, not like I'm not like gonna strip it or anything, but I think it's like checking the arms, checking the legs, taking a look at the torso wound.
So
Maka will now lay down the bodies of the two men that we killed because he saw you pick up the dead humans, like, this is the way, and collected them and brought them and laid them down. And he's now just kind of like poking and prodding them, being like, this one was hit with a mace. That one, cast some kind of powerful magic. Pick up the head and like look at the back of it, like, very powerful magic. Place it back down.
Right, I think for you, after examining the body, which again just feels very much like a corpse, you look up at the armor, and there's I think everyone has this. It's the defeated petulant thing, where it's just like, whenever your brain, heart, and soul have just said, for fuck's sake, it's kind of that. And like, I don't know what that is for Gwendolyn, whether it's like a head in the hands thing or what it is, but it's one of those weird things where it's like if you're watching someone you know in wireframe, I feel like you'd still be like, oh, wait a minute, I know, like, yeah, I know what that is.
Can I stop seeing? Like, because normally I would close my eyes.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this,
like,
Laura. I don't think you can. You don't have eyelids.
I think what I want to do is, like, I try to, like, close my eyes, quote unquote, but realizing that I can't, I think I literally just, like, fall face forward on the floor.
Just
so I can
pull dirt to like the sides.
Yeah, it's just
exactly.
Just a full George
like,
Michael from Arrested Development stumble fall, like.
And hopefully, like the eyes that I see out of are like actually the eyes.
They are, yep. So when you pack the dirt in, it's dark in the way that like keeping your eyes open but like wearing a blindfold is. So like you can still pick up details, but yes, it's as close to closing your eyes as you can get.
And then you just hear this sound.
No, that is a sound, Duncan, you have heard many a time.
This isn't just another pistol lesson here, you know. I need you to wake up so we can focus on what's happening. It's my job to keep you alive. It's not my job to be your friend. That's the thing you never quite understood.
What do you mean alive? I'm fucking dead.
No.
Yes.
Wait.
Do you see my body over there? What's happened to my voice?
Well, what
Ryan,
has happened to our voice, Tom?
You, something dawns on you. And again, it's like possibly too good to be true, but this was the armor of Amala kin Solaris, who was, again, a commoner who worked in a mine. It was always said that she spoke the common tongue. Obviously, no one knows what she sounds like now, but like, probably that. There might be some essence of her inside the armor as well. There might actually be more to all of this than you'd hoped. And if that's true, then it might all be starting again. It might be time to bring back the Dawnbreakers.
What?
Listen, I'm thinking that's why there was a long moment of silence. You just got turned into a walking statue. All right.
Is that what humans do when they die?
No.
Not in my experience.
Look at your two. That's what happens when people die. This is very different. I mean, the body, theoretically, what happens when people die. Is the body changing color, Tom? Does it have lividity? Like, I would have seen corpses before.
It honestly, the body looks like any other dead person you've ever seen.
They did prophesy something in the old texts. They said that Amala would return, or that some version of her would return, that there would be some kind of return to the right and proper ways once society had gone too dark. It's possible, unlikely, but possible, that this is what's happening here. Princess, what were you doing when you died?
So to be clear, my face is still in like space.
Yes, you are still buried in dirt.
I just want everyone to be very clear about what this looks like.
I think Duncan has dealt with a lot of your fits from your early tween to teenage years, so this is probably how you had a lot of discussions about emotions.
It was pillows, not dirt piles before, but the principle's the same.
Okay, I was standing by the armor. Nico stabbed me. I think he stabbed me, threw me into the armor, and then we all fell.
That's it. You were trying to protect him at the time, were you not?
I was trying to save that little shit.
You?
And then the liquidy thing said like good job to Nikos or something like that, and then all went to shit and I
Yes, I agree, vengeance and all that. But I mean, the thing I think you need to focus on here is that you did one truly noble thing before you died. Which is, in a world where everything else was corrupt, where even the Dawnbreakers had broken and turned to dog shit, you In the moment where you were the most in danger, you saved someone else's life before your own. Even though, and I know you, so I know this is true, you saw almost no value in that life. You just protected it out of instinct.
Well, I mean, he's my brother.
And even now, you reveal a depth that I had thought you had buried before we parted. So maybe Amala has given you a future. Maybe you can reclaim the throne. Maybe you can learn to be the ruler that your father is not.
Reclaim the throne as a bloody suit of armor?
Listen, if there's one thing I know, it's the rule of law. And there was this case a few years back where there was a kickball league and someone put a dog in it that was really good at kickball. And that dog's name was Bud. He was known as Ball Bud. And there's a Ball Bud rule. There's not a law that says a haunted suit of armor can't be the ruler. Which means if we can prove your legitimacy and if you can carry out the task and if you are worthy, then you could take the throne in this form.
And it's that at that point that you hear of a small voice at the door of the cottage say, "Huh? Did I hear dog? Are we talking about Ball Bud?" And to your shock, a small dog comes prancing into the doorway, a small Yorkshire Terrier, and he looks at all of you and says, "Oh, fucking great! It came true! I can't believe it! We're part of a prophecy!" But that's a story for another night, and we'll pick up again tomorrow.
This episode of Curse, Code, and Crown was edited by Ryan LaPlante, and the campaign was created by Tom McGee. Our original theme music was composed by Landon Knoblock, and all of Dum Dums and Dice's art is created by the brilliant Decapitated Markers. If you want to follow our players or our DM on Twitter, you can reach out to Laura at EL Hamstring, Ryan at the Ryan LaPlante, Tyler at Tyler_Hewitt, Tom McGee at McGeeTD, or you can message our whole company at Dum Dum Dice. So please, join us again for more Curse, Code, and Crown!
Dum Dums and Dice has to give a special thank you to the supreme beings of our Patreon at this time. Christian Menicola, Long Long, The Half-Blind Prophet, James Cuellar, DM Rob, Christopher Little, Joshua White, Olin Anderson, Sue One, and Jill and Noel LaPlante. If you want your name to be added to this list, you can join our Patreon too at patreon.com/dumdumdice. Thanks to them, and a little bit of thanks to you.